Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan, and together with Aaron, we are the RA21 podcast, a really adult show. Welcome back. So, today, before we jump into our podcast, we'd like to talk a little bit about the channel's future, where we're headed with specifically monetization. Alright.
Yeah, hey guys, Aaron here. Hope you guys are doing well. Ryan, how have you been doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Just coping, market they haven't been like really kind to us, but so like yeah, I've been just making content about like cooking, de-stressing a little, working, just
Yeah, I
normal
even
stuff.
noticed you changed your Instagram handle to Food and Stonks.
Yeah, it's no longer books and songs, guys. Like I know I haven't been like reading for like the last couple of months, I would say. So like just thought like it'd be better if like I just switch to like something else like which is more of a hobby than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's the fat pivot. This is called the Ryan pivot. He pivoted from books to food. Actually, I was thinking maybe cooks and stonks will be a funnier one because then I'll be asking you, so when are you going to change the first letter to Z?
Zooks and stonks.
Because it went from books to cooks, then dukes. I don't know what is a duke, but well, I mean, anyway, guys, you audience and listeners out there, we do want to announce something pretty special, and that is we have been monetized.
Yay.
Yeah, I mean that's something which we realized that we could have actually done like a few months ago because I didn't notice that we could be monetized until like last I think 2 weeks ago. Then I realized, oh, actually we can monetize already. Well, but I think me and Ryan have discussed about it, and we want to be a little bit public about this because we don't just want to turn it on without like being upfront about it lah. And that is the monetization track is basically something that is better for the podcast to gain an audience because just like the YouTube algorithm, right? When there is an option for the content creator to turn on the monetization tab, right? Then generally the content will be pushed up more because they are more incentivized to push out content that has monetization now. So actually, what I realized, Ryan, is that actually after episode 3 we could have monetized already. It's just that I didn't notice and I actually didn't check until like the last episode. And I was like, oh, okay, we can be monetized. So generally there is like 3 types of monetization for this particular podcast, right? The first one is basically you just put a subscription. Then the second one is that you can put in ads, and the third one is becoming a sponsor, right? So I think just to be very like upfront with the audience, right? Actually, like the only thing that's available for the Southeast Asian side of things is that we can only do a subscription service. Right, and then there's only 3 options, and after you choose this option, right, we cannot actually go back. So that is I think we put it in US dollar terms. Okay, there is $1 a month, $5 a month, and $10 a month.
Right.
So in regards of this, actually, me and Ryan have discussed, right, and then we kind of feel that we don't really want to do content that segregates subscribers from non-subscribers, and we actually want it to be something which people just contribute whatever they feel, whether or not if it's valuable, then they contribute lah.
Yeah,
So
think of it. It's kind of like a donation, but
like Patreon like that, like you
yeah.
think of it. It's basically like Patreon because like number one, we always want this podcast to be something that's accessible for everyone, regardless of whether or not they want to put money or not. So, we kind of want to price it in a way whereby, it helps the algorithm. So what do you think, Ryan? These 3 options, once we choose, we cannot go back already.
Yeah, I mean, like the subscription is nice, but like I don't really care for like monetization to begin with. Like if they want to put on ads or something, it's also fine. But as much as I hate ads as you guys do, like we try not to do it, but like if it's part of like the deal with like Anchor or YouTube, then we'll have to do it. So yeah, we'll just try our best to like keep it free as much as we can, so it's more accessible to more people, get the help, like reach the reach is better. And but like among the 3 options, like the kind of like the most free option that I see is kind of like the so-called donation, or like kind of like the Patreon option. So yeah, that's
Yeah, but
probably
then
the
the
option.
Patreon option, we also have to decide which one among these 3 is the better one. You can either choose the $1. Actually, it's in Sing dollar lah. It's either 1 Sing, $5 Sing, or $10 Sing a month. I'm actually more inclined towards the $5 a month one, because I think $10 is a bit
Yeah.
too much. I think it's a bit too high. Then $1, I kind of feel that this podcast is not really for broad market audience. It's more of towards a niche, like super niche audience. So I don't think the market size is as wide as we can go. And I think the middle ground is around like 5. So I think here's the deal. For the listeners, I think me and Ryan have pretty much confirmed that we do want to turn it on, but then we also want to let you guys know that you putting money inside is not compulsory, because we will not be making content that segregates paid subscribers and non-paid subscribers.
Yeah, definitely. Even if say like YouTube, it's you have to pay on like a single platform. We are on multiple platforms. We're on Apple Music, sorry, Apple Podcasts, we're on like Spotify, we're also on YouTube. So you could always go to like the free site to get the podcast. So yeah, we're just trying to be as free as we can, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, essentially it is free lah. I mean, the only thing that basically, the only reason why we're doing this is because when you turn on the monetization tab, the algorithm actually pushes out your content more. That's it.
Yeah, and the reason we're having this discussion is just to be extremely transparent, because like I understand like sometimes it can be a little bit annoying if like a podcast would require you to donate, or you'd be required to watch ads, and but do you like we don't really mind we don't really care for the money, but like turning on the monetization does help us increase our reach on YouTube, on the Spotify, all that platforms. It helps us get on top of like the exploration pages and all that. So yeah, that's so that like kind of like appeals to the platform much better. And in the long term, it helps for the growth of the podcast. So that's why we're being honest and having this discussion about it.
Yeah, and I think generally assuming, let's say if this this like thing actually really does take off, then I can envision that whatever proceeds we'll have will go back into this business lah, essentially. Because I mean, ultimately this platform was always initially meant to be something that would help people. So if we can build a business around it, then we'll see lah. I mean, we're still very early. We're still having a lot of fun, so we enjoy doing this lah, and we're not really doing it for the money, because
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, put it this way lah. I think I mean, both of us actually make more money from our investments than all this like monetization lah. That's why our topics are usually not very mainstream, because
Yeah.
we don't really want to do mainstream topics. Yeah. So, well, so I think we pretty much. Are you in agreement, Ryan, that we can go with the 4.99 one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. So guys, we'll just turn on the monetization tab for the $5 a month one, but just keep in mind that you don't have to like subscribe it. If you want to, you can like the fun, then we'll see how to best like improve the podcast lah, pretty much. Yeah. But you don't just a note that you don't have to, if you want you can. If you want to give back you can. I think one of the benefits about this monthly subscription is that if you want to do a donation, then I think you can also cancel if you want. So for example, if let's say this month you just want to donate $5, then next month, right, you want to remove it, you also can do that. And that's one of the things I like about this subscription, I think.
Yeah, it's you're free to cancel anytime.
Yeah. So just keep it voluntary lah. I think that's our message today. Okay.
Yeah.
So we hope you understand. It's basically just for algorithm. You are under no obligation to give it money. It's just, if you want, that will be great. If not, then it's fine. We'll just continue to do this content for free.
All right.
All right, so that's our announcement. By the way, thanks so much, you guys, for all the support. We definitely appreciate it, because we never actually envisioned that we'll actually get to this monetization so fast.
Yeah.
I'm a
Really,
bit blur
thank
lah.
you.
I should have like seen this like 3 months ago. I'm just a bit blur. I never actually checked.
Same thing over here. I've never checked the
Yeah,
the
like Ryan
stats.
doesn't even bother to check. I had to update. Hey Ryan, actually we're doing quite well, right?
But really, thank you guys for all the support. We'll continue to work hard to put out like proper contents with like nice topics to talk about around investment, life, and everything. So yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's go on to our topic, and that is moonshots and snake oil.
That's right. So before like I think before we wanna like get into like all the questions and everything, the first thing I'm gonna ask you, Aaron, is like, can you kind of like roughly define what are moonshots and what are snake oil? Because I think the term is kind of like ambiguous. A lot of people don't really understand. And
I
yeah.
you know when you're in like primary school and secondary school, you always learn this concept called the Venn diagram, right? And I think the problem with snake oil and moonshots is that they are very very close, but not very very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I cannot like the best way to describe it, right, is that the reason why moonshots and snake oil are in the same sentence is because both of them appear to be the same, but they are very different. And the problem is, I guess the best example I can give you, right, is you look at, okay, every single investment idea, right, in the entire journey of it being an investment goes through many different stages and many different phases. All right. So I give you an example. Let's take Tesla. All right. I'm not sure how many of you audience out there know that Tesla was public for quite a long time, and it's only recently that they actually have a lot of publicity lah. As a person who has passed on Tesla in 2012, okay, I can tell you because I remember back in my day, right, when I first noticed Tesla, it was actually brought to me by a student in a class when I was teaching a class about investment. So he was bringing out this company called Tesla, and he was saying that this company was going to be the future. It's going to be amazing, and basically I look at the financials of this company, right, and Tesla was like burning cash left, right, center, and then there was like super a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And back then, right, Tesla was only less than $10 billion in market cap. 10 billion.
Wow.
Okay, so I
Wow.
could have put in, let's say, 10K. Okay, at less than 10 billion. And today their market cap is how many billion? 800 billion. So that's a 80x.
Oof.
And I could have turned 10,000 into how
Close to
much?
a million. Close to a
Yeah,
million.
close to a mil. Okay, but I didn't because I didn't take that moonshot. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Because so I would say that what I've learned through this 10-year experience, right, is that sometimes you kind of need to take moonshots to see how they work out, even if it's a small position. All right. The problem is that very early on in the investment stage, right? Usually investments takes about 10 years to play out. A lot of these investment ideas are the lines are very blurred between moonshot and snake oil. Very, very blurred. Okay. So I just gave you a Tesla example. In 1999, there was this company which went super high and then crashed 97%. Okay. And the lines were also very blurred. It was a company called Amazon.
Oof.
Okay, in 2000, the early 2000, Amazon was really a moonshot because like they're not really sure whether they'll even survive, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't believe me, just take out a cash flow statement just take out the cash flow statement from Tesla in 2012, 2013, and ask yourself whether you invest in that company or not. It was pretty hard, like really, like you really have to believe in the CEO to really like put in 100% of your net worth inside. So I mean, this is what I've learned and I'm trying to share here. And I think this is a very important topic to talk about, right? Is because I've learned from my experience, right, is that if you have not put in if you don't really have a small little portion of your portfolio where you can put money at risk and take moonshot choices, right, you are at risk, right, of losing a lot of potential in terms of the growth of your portfolio. Because a lot of these best ideas, right? I'm just not. I'm and like, these are just two I name. There's also a lot which were moonshots. In 2014, there was this company called Nvidia, which I didn't take a shot. It was less than 20 billion in market cap.
Oh, that's arguable. Nvidia, I mean, the more I look at it, like I don't definitely they have been performing quite well over the last 10 years, but like if you look at the revenues, like where the profits all coming from, you can kind of tell, it's a bit unsustainable. But yeah, I tend to disagree that like Nvidia is like a solid moonshot, but like definitely it has performed over the last 10 years and it has grown considerably. How much have they grown? Like I remember talking to you about Nvidia, and they went from like how many, like they went 40x,
Yep.
was it?
Yep.
But yeah, I totally agree that there's like this you have to kind of like allocate a small amount of your portfolio into this moonshots and appeal to your FOMO once in a while, because like you never know, like some of these like there's no nice words to say this, but you will really not know when some of these gambles actually pay off.
Yeah, I think you use the word gamble in a very correct manner, because essentially in the very early part of the investment thesis, right, it tends to be a gamble, and therefore is the lines are very blurred between like moonshot and snake oil lah. So I think the likelihood of success in those type of ideas are 50-50. It's like going to the crap table, right? It's like, but here's the thing, right? It's like going to the baccarat table, right, in the casino, right? And then you're
Yeah.
making a 50-50% bet on high or low, right? But the thing is, the reason why it's so appealing, right, in investment and stocks, right, is that unlike the baccarat table where it's 50-50, right, you can change your bet in the middle of the gamble
Yes,
when it comes
that's
to investing. And that is something which is very different from going to the casino, where you once you place the bet, you cannot change your bet unless you're playing blackjack. But even then, even if you can change on blackjack, the odds are not in your favor lah, because they have about 5 or 6 stacks. So even if you count cards, you can't really win the algorithm, right? So the thing about investing when it comes to moonshots, right? You can allocate your funds, right, according to how the story plays out in 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And unlike the casino, right, in investing, right, the story happens over time. It takes a longer time for the story to unravel. And the whole point about having a moonshot position or whatever snake oil position is because you're trying to determine at what point, right, in this story, does this turn into a viable investment? Does that make sense?
definitely.
Because I can give you many examples. You know, I just gave you the example of Tesla. I give you an example of Amazon, right? There's also another company which everybody today uses and know, and there's this company, right, where the CEO left. Okay, he left. Then he started a company. He died. Then basically they kick him out. Then I think for like 10 years, the company like basically went nowhere. Then he came back, and then the company, when he came back, right, he became a new CEO, and basically the company went to like become one of the most valuable companies in the world, right? And if you were to look at the financials of this company, I did this at experiment, right, where I basically gave everybody company A, company B, and I removed the name of the company, and asked them to look at the financials. Ask which company will you invest in. A lot of them are chose a company A and not company B. Because company A, the balance sheet was very good. Company B, the balance sheet was shit, right? And the funny part, right, is that company B would have been the better performer than company A. You know why?
Because there's growth.
Yes, because fundamentally, even though company B, the financials look like shit, that was a time, right, where Steve Jobs came back to Apple.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's company A was basically Apple after Steve Jobs died.
Ah, all right.
All right. So here's my so I would say, right, this is a very good example, right, where moonshots, right, is something which is very dynamic and something which you need to consider and think like a business person. And that is when you sit down and look at the finances, right, you also cannot just base your judgment based on what the numbers tell you, because what you really need to do as an investor and as a business person is to look 5 and 10 years ahead, right, and see whether or not this person who came in can actually execute. And that was something which took me very, very long to learn when it comes to moonshots and snake oil. Because for the longest time, I'm a value investor. I'm a person who is very factual and fundamental, right? It is very tough for me to wrap my head around whether or not this business can actually perform 5, 10, 15 years ahead.
From a value investing point of view, I think like these moonshots and snake oil is rather risky to invest in, which I understand. But like definitely, if it's a matter of like risk management. You don't want to kind of like miss out on like 100x returns, but also you don't want to be like YOLO into the whole thing and like lose 100% of your capital. It's a matter of like kind of like sizing your portfolio to adjust it for the amount of risk that you're gonna take. You don't YOLO into the whole thing. Like a really bad example would be kind of like some of the cryptocurrencies that we see, those that crash and burn during the drawdown, or
Yep.
some of the companies, they that like very famous infamously like Theranos.
Yep, I agree.
So, like, that's what we're gonna talk about today, the whole thing, like moonshots, snake oil. Like, how do you determine if it's going to go 10x, 100x, or it's going to go and crash and burn? That's what we're gonna talk about today,
Yeah.
right? So we've talked about like a fair share of like the examples of like good examples of like moonshots and snake oils going 100x and also crashing and burning. So like in when you're looking at all these investment thesis, right? Like Aaron, what are the differences that you kind of like notice when you see like you compare the moonshots and the snake oils together?
Yeah, this is one thing which is will determine whether or not you are flexible enough in your investment like process, right? Because it's very easy to like sit down and tell people, right? You know, you need to look out for fundamentally flawed ideas. You know, so a very good example I can give is Luna. You know, unfortunately for the people who get burned in Luna, sorry, but you know I have to talk about this because I think it's a very good example of differences between a moonshot and a snake oil. So you know, for the longest time, the community around Luna has been very like, you know, YOLO, you know, we're gonna be rich, etc., right? And usually, you know, it's not that the intention is bad, you know, behind this idea. You know, they had an idea, they tried to execute it, it didn't work. Okay, and it's largely due to fundamentally flawed designer, if that makes sense. Because the moonshots are basically ideas, right, where there is a very strong fundamental reason for the idea to survive or for the idea to execute. Okay, so I give you an example. Um, a good moonshot is something like, for example, I give you Bitcoin, right? Because if you understand the fundamental idea of Bitcoin, you know, basically it's a cryptocurrency that is a pristine store of value. Okay, for 13, 14 years running, right? It does one thing very well, and that is immutable transfer of value using a ledger, right? Which is quite hard. Till today, nobody can replicate that track record lah. Because every half an hour while we speak, they always update the ledger, right? So this is a very good example of fundamentally sound, something very simple to understand every half an hour, right? Snake oil, on the other hand, basically there's a huge ton of cryptocurrency who tries to sell you the idea that they're better than Bitcoin. Okay, why? Very simple. They try to sell you the idea we have higher transactions per second. Right? They try to sell the idea with they have super complicated smart contracts. Right? They try
Or
to
they
sell
have
the
like
idea
or
that you can
consensus
stake.
mechanism, like
Then
fancy stuff.
they also try to sell you the idea that they have a council, you know, they have like the Lord of the Ring council, you know, to make decisions and things like that. Or they even have like 100 what you call it, peer-to-peer review vetted
This is
papers.
starting to sound like a project I know. Ah.
All right. Then you know, this council of Lord of the Rings will determine whether, you know, this project will move down, left, right. I don't know. I don't care. All right.
And
So
the founder of the project goes on YouTube to speak on 5-hour interviews about.
yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, right, I would say that projects that are good, right, ideas that are usually good, right, a lot of these people don't spend a lot of time convincing people why this is a good investment.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, ideas which are fundamentally good, and this is the thing that I noticed between moonshot and snake oil is that moonshots, right, it tends to be companies and ideas, right, where people just focus uh very narrow focus or telling people what is the core value of their business. All right. And it's a very simple one sentence. Snake oil, on the other hand, try to give you specs and they try to confuse you. Like they like to tell you the data specs of this, but they are very confused in terms of not being able to deliver a very concise idea of why they need to exist.
And also
Right?
one thing like I see, like I notice, right, snake oils usually they like to kind of like be like a somewhat like an Apple killer or like a Bitcoin killer, if that makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
they try to like put the flaws of like some certain more fundamentally solid companies or like products or like cryptocurrency, the flaws, right? They put it on the spotlight and then they say we do it better, you know.
Yeah.
But then, like, do they actually do it better?
Or the
Like that?
question, or the better question is that is it even really a flaw or is it a design choice?
Yeah, exactly.
You see,
It's kind of
a
like
lot of
Cardano.
Yeah, a lot. You see, a lot of people, right? They like to bash Apple, right? They say that, oh, they don't have this, they don't have that, they don't have this, but they actually forget that the Apple design ethos is very simple, and that is they make very deliberate decisions to make sure that they don't release things until they are satisfied to release it. That has been the Apple way, right? Since Steve Jobs came on board, which is why when you look at the spec sheet, right, usually Apple specs are usually quite shit, lah, right? Compared to all this like showcase. But the thing is, Apple, the way that they do things are the ethos, right? Is that they only release items when they're ready for it. You get what I mean? So
Like
it's very
they
slow,
mm,
very slow, very decisive. They're very intentional about the things that they do.
it's more about quality for them, I would say. It's not about like if you see other phones, they try to push out new functions like yeah, you can say Apple is kind of slow, like I don't know, maybe night mode on like iPhone. That has taken quite a long time for night mode to get on board on like iPhone. But when it is on iPhone, it works just as fine, works even better than some of the phones out there. So
Yeah,
like the general consensus I feel is kind of like solid projects, solid products, right? They only release when they are kind of like perfected by the people who are building them.
yeah.
I know like in general in life, you can't have perfection all the time. But these guys, they try to go for as much of like a perfection, not just in terms of like the product itself, but also the supply chain. They have to ensure that they have suppliers for some of the parts. They have to have people building the phone. They have to have the whole manufacturing supply chain ready. Or like in terms of like cryptocurrency, you have to have like a network of like infrastructure. You have to have like a network of people securing the network, of proper, server and all that. You have to have that ready. And so far, the only project that I see that has all this thing ready is really just Ethereum and Bitcoin. The others are kind of like ambiguous. You don't really hear about where the servers are, where their consensus mechanism is done, all that thing. And yeah, and that's
And
kind of
that
like why, sometimes it's rather like unclear thing whether they are like actually a good investment or not. And that's why, we could consider it as like high risk. We don't know the fundamentals. We don't exactly know what's going on behind the company, the project. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is really the thing now. One of the key differentiators, right, between moonshots and snake oil is that you sometimes really don't know whether is it a moonshot or snake oil until you have paid the price called time. Because really time, right, when you give time to your investments, right, you really see the investment for all its flaws, and then as the time start to progress, what you're going to realize is that true moonshots, which are fundamentally good, right, over time, right, they tend to give you better reasons of why you should increase your allocation, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you invest in moonshots that turn out to be snake oil, because sometimes they do, unfortunately for whatever reason, sometimes it gives you very good reasons why you should exit, right?
Mm.
The problem is that a lot of people, when they see they get confused, right, between the reason to exit versus giving it as a reason to buy more.
I would say it's rather of like a conversation with yourself, like a really hard conversation. Like you
Yep.
have to be honest about it. You have to see the fact for what it actually is, and like don't try to like justify this and that. Because like I see some people on during the Luna crash, instead of like getting out, because like the problem with like Luna, I'm not an expert, by the way, but this is just what I think. It was that they pegged their value to Bitcoin. So they opened up like a vulnerability to get attacked financially.
Yep.
And when like I'm not saying like institutions did it, but like whales probably, I don't know. But when they see that chance, they will take it. They will take it. And there's nothing stopping them from taking it. And this is what exactly happened with Luna. They took that opportunity and they destroyed it. So
Yep.
like with things that are kind of like high risk, how many percent of your portfolio should you actually allocate to this
Uh-huh.
moonshots?
That's a very good question, right, Ryan? Personally, how many percent do you allocate?
A little bit less than 5.
Okay.
It's my DGen gambling bag.
Yeah. Actually, I like what Ryan has mentioned, and it should really feel like a degen gambling back. And I think for most people out there, right? When you talk about moonshot and snake oil, I think you need to come with the consensus that the maximum you can lose is 100% of your capital.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I think.
that's kind of like how the VCs do it also. Like
Yeah,
when they do like angel investing and all that, they don't just YOLO into one startup. They
yeah,
do it for like 20 startups. They
yeah,
they know people, and then they go around, they invest, they do their seed round funding and everything on like
yeah,
20 different companies.
yeah,
So even if like 15 of them die, 5 of
yeah,
them go 100x. They take back whatever capital they have put in, and then they get like a solid 50x net.
yeah. I agree.
So I think
And
that's kind of like how I approach with like the my allocation in terms of like portfolio. Because like when I say like 5% of my portfolio allocation is into like moonshots or snake oils, out of this 5%, I also invest in a lot of like, I think more than 10 different investments. It's like more than I count. So like it's like things that I would care to like follow up every now and then, but like just once in a while when I read news, like I catch up a bit. But it's 10 different ideas, and I fully expect 8 of them to go bust.
yep, and I think that is the right approach, lah, guys. So when you ask me like how many percent of your portfolio can you allocate to moonshots, right? I will say that on the more risky side is maybe maximum 10% of your wealth. I think that's a good number to shoot for. And I think end of the day, the risk adjust the expectation of return you should get from a moonshot should also compensate for the position that you have. Right. The reason why 90% of my portfolio is invested inside ideas like Bitcoin and Tesla and Ethereum is because I only expect them conservatively to return me a 10x. Because in terms of like the market cap and the expected return, I don't expect 90% of my portfolio to get like 100x lah. I mean like this is just risk assessment, right? Whereas if I invest like because the likelihood that these ideas go to zero, I would say it's not super high. It's not super high, but I'm diversified enough that even if let's say one of them unfortunately really does go to zero, the other two can compensate.
And this is
Right.
the only time like both of us would advocate for diversification. Like just within that 5 or 10% degen gambling bag, you diversify heavily. But you
Yeah.
outside of this 5 or 10%, you concentrate on just like a couple of solid investment ideas that you think will or not think yet you know that it's going to 10x.
Yeah. So I think that's the fundamental question now. The fundamental question you need to ask is, do you expect this idea to 10x or 100x? Because end of the day, that will actually determine how many percent of your portfolio you should put in. Because I can tell you, even if that time were to go back to 2012, right, I can tell very little people, right, will actually put in 100% of their net worth inside Tesla.
No, it's even if like I myself is like a Tesla fanboy now. Like back in 2012, I wouldn't do it because like they actually looked like they were going to die, that company
Yeah.
back in 2012. So it's like why would I with a sane mind put my money down on a dying company?
Yeah, and don't even talk about Tesla. Let's talk about Bitcoin 2012. You think most people are putting 100% of their net worth inside Bitcoin 2012 after a
No way,
95%
man.
crash, right?
No way, man.
And I've known Bitcoin since 2012. I've actually seen like the Bitcoin story since 2012, right? So I've seen 2012 to 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. So actually I know Bitcoin quite well in terms of the last 10 years, including Tesla, because I've been investing for close to more than 10 years already. So I can tell you, right, the reason why the moonshot portfolio is that for every single Tesla, for every single Bitcoin, there were many people who also died. Many ideas which also died. Right. So this is why I think if you want to invest in an idea, which is a moonshot, and we're talking about moonshot, I think the best way to describe them is that ideas with the potential to hit 100x or more, right? And that is you try to diversify as much as you can, because the likelihood that these 100x ideas, right, actually reach 100x is actually quite low, right? Therefore, because there's always because it's like a 50-50, right? It's either you lose all your capital or you go 100x. And because of this particular equation, right, you kind of need to size your position properly. If not, you end up in a position, right, where if it does go to zero, then your entire net worth gets wiped out, which is what we have seen in the last like month. For all the people who put their money inside Celsius,
Oh my
put their
god.
money inside Luna, right? What happened?
gone.
Yeah. So it comes back to like making sure that you understand the idea fundamentally, whether or not is there any design flaw. Because the problem with Celsius, right, to use an example, is that they do have a design flaw, and that is they are centralized entities which are not regulated, right? That is a design flaw, but nobody wants to talk about it. When I first started investing in crypto, everybody was telling me, "Oh, Celsius is very good. You know, they're giving me 20% return for the last 5 years." But a lot of people all fail to ask this very simple question: how do they get 20% return every year?
Like, where is the money coming from?
Yeah, how do they earn 20% return every year? Nobody can answer that. They say, "Oh, don't worry, they're good." I say, "Good based on what?" I say, "Based on what track record?"
Are
I say,
they
"That's
like if you want to say like they're kind of like good, right? At least verify that they are regulated.
yeah." And this, and
Because
they
if
have
they're
the
regulated, then they will be held accountable, and you will be kind of like insured by like in Malaysia at least, you'll be insured. So if you lose like 50K, maybe in the wild chance there's like this PIDM insurance thing that you can get your money back, you know. But like if it's unregulated, it's centralized. The moment the CEO takes off, it's gone.
Yeah, which is why, like, end of the day, you kind of need to go back to the core investment thesis on understanding whether, basically, you need to be very honest, right, about whether or not this idea has flaws or not. And if you're unable to, like, acknowledge them, right, then that is where you are going you're very edging close towards delusional territory already. And that is very disastrous for investing because you're going in blind. And that is very, very dangerous because I've seen many people in my career, right, as well as my investment career, who kind of mistake moonshot and snake oil as investing, right, when they're actually gambling. And that is a very fine line between taking moonshots and gambling, because moonshots are calculated bets which are positioned, right, to ensure that you lose the least amount of money for the potential to 100x. And gambling is basically just, you just ignore everything, right, and they basically just throw money and hope and pray that this idea will work.
To interject a bit, right? I mean, here's a bonus question for you. So if I were to categorize like this blind confidence as conviction, right? So in the context of like conviction, risk management, and gambling, like how would you balance all three of this for a moonshot position?
I would say it goes back to your homework. You must really like be very honest about your investment reason. And I think the key thing you need to write on a piece of paper is that the reason why I am buying this investment is due to this, right? And if you can explain it to a 5-year-old or 6-year-old or 10-year-old, then it means that you understand the investment very well. Right? I give you an example. The reason why I invest in Bitcoin is because it is the most pristine store of value that the world has ever seen since the beginning of time. I have never seen anything like this, and I think that it's going to do quite well. The reason why I invest in Tesla is because I do believe in a green energy future and a future of electric cars. Because basically they're going to change the entire way that the car is being used, and I can see that happening, right? And they are executing in terms of their revenue growth. Bitcoin adoption, they are executing in terms of their user network growth, right?
Yep.
Whereas when it comes to like gambling, right? When you talk about projects like Luna, everybody gave me the same reason. It is the reasons are very delusional, and most of them convoluted because I cannot understand what they're trying to tell me. And then when you try to like attack one angle, right, they usually tell you, "Oh, you're a boomer. You don't understand." That's not
Well,
a very good answer, you know.
I guess
I
I'm
mean,
a boomer too then.
I mean, that's not a very good answer, you know. I mean, like, if basically, right, when I look at my investments, if people come and attack me for my investment idea, I take them seriously and try to really dissect what they are trying to attack, and then see whether there's a way to counter. So, for example, when it comes to Bitcoin, right, we've done a very good example. You just listen to our first episode on the fiat standard and the crypto. We've done episode 1, episode 3, right? And basically, we took in a lot of this FUD, and then we try to debunk them to the best of our abilities. Things like tether FUD, things like all this, like, with the FUD, a lot of this like control, etc. We have already like attacked, already like give very grounded reasons as to why. Whereas when you talk about like gambling and then like pray and hope, right, what you realize is that this community of people, right, they tend to not take criticism very well, and they basically just go back to the fundamental reason that boomer. They just use a very broad alienization way of basically disputing like FUD, which is, to me, is not very it's not a very good way of explaining your investment, the reason why you invest now. Because if you are very good, if you understand your investment very well, you should be able to take in criticism and explain to them without toxicity, right, why this investment will work out.
I mean, like, I'm not sure for companies like those public companies how you can do this, but at least in crypto projects, right? Like, how many of you actually dig up the white paper and read it? That's the thing that like helps me to do my homework most of the time when I try to try to tell whether this is actually a good investment or not. Like the specific crypto project, like a lot of the white papers out there, right, doesn't make sense. It
Yeah,
fucking doesn't
I
make sense.
agree.
Huh?
I agree.
It's kind of like if you write like scientific journals, it's like half of those journals out there, it brings you round and round the whole world, but it doesn't actually tell you the main point. And like most of the time when you read these kind of papers, right, there's an abstract, all right? There's always an abstract, and then if you read the abstract and you don't fucking understand the abstract, you get the fuck out already.
It's like the SEC 10K, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's exactly what you would do with the public companies, the SEC 10K, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
annual reports and the quarterly reports, SEC, all the filings, then all this like footnotes, etc. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is like in terms of like determining the blurs between like gambling, right? Is that how much homework have you done in your ideas to basically tell people their concerns, because it's like it is the way that you handle that objection, right? It's like when you do sales, right? There's this is what we call objection, right? You go to maybe your lawyer, okay, objection, right? This idea has problem because da 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 da. A good lawyer, when they hear an objection, right, can give a very reasoned, non-emotional response to an objection that is very logical and factual, right? This
Yep.
because it's what you call a rebuttal. But if your rebuttal is basically to tell the opposing counsel, right, oh, you're a boomer. What? How do you think the judge on the stand is going to
Yeah,
judge?
yeah.
Tell me. How is the judge going to react? I said, so you're objecting because he's a boomer? That's not a very good statement. Can you like give me something more good substance like that? Like you need to show evidence and proof like why that fella's argument is incorrect, right? And that is what I think you should do as an investor. And that is good investors, what I've noticed is that they are very, very skeptical. They tend to be very naturally skeptical people, and that is usually when they get a sense or hint, right, that there is some real objection going on, they actually don't shut off everything. They actually try to find ways to see whether or not is there any merit inside this objection, right? And if they go down the rabbit hole and they realize that this objection is something they cannot refute, right, then essentially what they should do is that they should reduce the allocation or sell the investment.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Right.
kind of
So
like you understand that the fundamentals are not sound anymore, and that's
yep.
when you resize your position or get the fuck out.
Yeah, which is what has happened over the last last month lah. There's a lot of the crypto entire space. A lot of them now we realize how many of them are swimming naked, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. When Luna was like getting shit down, how many people actually took a step back and realized that the design was flawed and they actually sold quite little. A lot of them actually bought more.
I
That's a
mean,
very good.
like
That's a
the
very good
thing with
example.
yeah, with like Luna, right? Like we're gonna dive just a little bit into this. Like I never really understood the algorithm that balances the stable coins and the what do you call that? I never really understood
The
like
pack,
the
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 pack.
the the pack. Yeah, the moment they had that pack, it was like a recipe for disaster. It was still okay when they had like the algorithmic thing going on, but even the algo thing, right? I did not understand. I watched like a YouTube of people trying to dumb it down. I read the paper, that didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand at all. It's like it's kind of like that, you gotta like trust yourself, like try to educate yourself, but have that level of like healthy skepticism, not to a point where you don't dare to take a chance, but like just enough to ensure yourself that this is like a sound investment, that you don't see any red flags. Like I think that's kind of like what most of us would agree on, like red flags really. Like Theranos was a red flag, like but people kept putting names in it. That's kind of weird. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's actually like the next topic, right? The next topic is like before we go to the went well, maybe we touch on examples of moonshots that went bust or snake oil, right? So there in the last 2 years, I think there were three broad ideas where people realized they got burned very heavily, The first of all is specs, by the spec lord, Chamath, right? He pump everything, then basically he just rug pull everyone, right?
Pump
I
the
mean,
pump and dump lord.
the pump and dump lord, right? People always give him credibility, but actually I find that if you actually really like sit back and look at the way that he does things, this you just need to take a pinch of salt. He's a very good salesperson, right?
Yeah, his podcast is actually quite entertaining, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say it's entertaining, I say, but take
Yeah.
things of what he say with a pinch of salt,
Be
right?
careful.
Yeah, just be careful. We won't go much into that, but there was this craze of prospects, which basically gave me reminiscent. Actually, it kind of made me reminisce about the 1980s, where there was a lot of LBOs or leverage buyouts, where basically people like created this new entity, then they basically like merge, and then like basically retail investors all got fucked up because like the amount of regulatory like hurdles they need to jump through specs basically just went down the drain, right? Because they just merged, then it's like a blank check company, then they use it to buy, then everybody got on the train, then a lot of people made money, 20%, 20-30%, wow, happy, then after that dropped 90%.
It's called backdoor IPO for a reason.
Yeah, so this is a very good example of how Moonshots went bust, because essentially a lot of these like companies that went inside the spec route, right? The fact of the matter is a lot of them were just not worth their valuations, and I think fundamentally you need to understand the fundamental reason why these companies went into specs is very simple, because they need money.
But I would argue that not all the people who's like all the institutions who's buying the specs are doing it just for pump and dump. For a good example would be Palantir. They are buying up specs, right? But to that buyout, they attach this condition that the company that they buy out for must use Palantir.
Yep.
So that's when I would say buying specs is actually a genius move, because Palantir is buying specs to expand their reach of software. They are trying to build the religion of like using Palantir in all the key areas where they themselves determine that it's important. So they go buy up like a promising startup. They make them use Palantir and improve them. So it's like a win-win situation for Palantir and the company that they actually buy out for. But in terms of like those companies that just buy to pump and dump, yeah, it's pump and dump. What else is there to say, right?
Yeah, and essentially a lot of these companies, if you actually really understand their finances, they are very fast growing, but they are not growing with profitable cash flow. You get what I mean? It's like a lot of people like to use the Amazon example, which is quite stupid. You know why? Because actually Amazon, if you remove away their investment operations, actually they were cash flow positive. If you actually adjust the cash flow statements, right, in the year mid 2000 to the early 2010s, you actually realize that Amazon was actually cash flow positive. The only reason why they show negative is because they were investing heavily into future revenue growth. So they were arbitraging between a very low interest rate environment to basically fuel their growth, which was growing more than 30-40%. So the cost of capital, right, if you actually average out Amazon, was less than 5%, but they were using that 5% cost of capital to grow their business and revenues by 20-30%, right? So
Yeah.
so this particular recipe, in terms of like business, it made sense for Amazon, but you realize that a lot of this the specs that actually went into the merging, right? A lot of them actually have very shitty cash flow. And then the problem is that a lot of their businesses, right, were fundamentally the business value, right, in terms of like giving like real value to people, it's not really that groundbreaking. Like if you really like take a step back and really ask what problem does this business solve, you realize that a lot of them are basically just businesses with no real core offering except arbitraging. They're basically either middlemen. They don't actually own the vertical integration. They don't actually have a new manufacturing. Like they are doing nothing new except just arbitraging. And I find that a lot of these businesses which are arbitragers, they don't make like a pipeline, proper pipeline, right? Like vertical integration, right? Then this really becomes an issue because when you try to envision a business which can go 100x, right? You're talking about business like 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion. What you realize is a lot of these businesses that can scale to such a huge size, right, are usually businesses where they actually control the vertical pipeline.
Yeah, they're all vertically integrated. Say
Yeah,
like
they are
Apple,
vertically
right?
vertically integrated.
They manufacture themselves, they design themselves. They are even taking in like the CPU and the GPUs designs into their own hands. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
it's all vertically integrated, stays within the company, so they can suck up all the margin themselves. So they don't have to share.
yeah, so I think end of the day, this is why whenever I look at the spec space, right, when some of these can go 100x. A fundamental question you need to ask is that whether or not the core value that this business provide, is it a vertically integrated company, or is it basically a horizontal company where they basically just stay one place and they go nowhere? Because if they just stay one place and go nowhere, right, then usually most of the time, this company which is not vertically integrated, they will have issue trying to scale to more than 100x, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that's the reality of the situation. It is a reality.
it's kind of like whether they control the whole manufacturing and supply line like
Yep.
Tesla does, or are they just part of the equation? So if they are just part of the equation, they will forever be just part of that one equation. Like
Yeah.
maybe you sponsor or you supply Tesla with like a monitor, say. You'll be forever making monitors only.
Yeah. And then how big is the monitor market, you tell me?
Exactly.
Yeah, so like essentially, I mean, that's a very good example. Lah. Of course, not to say that there isn't like companies which are very niche, very specialized, they cannot be good business ideas. But usually, when you look at businesses which are very focused and niche, right, they tend to be businesses which are very steady growers. They don't grow super fast. They don't grow 50-60% per year. Usually, these companies, I can give you example. Lah. You look at the Rolls Royce, they manufacture engines for aeroplanes, right? They look at Corning Glass, they basically manufacture glass peripherals for your dinner plates in Asia, in especially Singapore. They everyone actually uses Corning glass. Your Apple iPhone, they use Corning glass, right? Because they are the lead manufacturers and they very heavily specifically design glass for almost everywhere around the world. High quality glass, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, these are very good examples of very niche markets that managed to grow, but it didn't take them like 10 years to grow. It took them many decades of like a lot of R&D and being good at what they do. Then they basically just become cash cow and they just steadily grow lah. So these are very good examples. So the other one that went bust, right, is also what you call the meme stocks craze, where it sort of like got together to like the specs, right? Basically a lot of people like invested in a lot of these like meme stocks. So a very good example are things like what's that? The AMC,
Yeah,
and
GME,
GameStop.
AMC, yeah.
Then in terms of tokens, there are the Shiba Inu token, and there's also the Dogecoin. These are basically like meme ideas. And then this is a very, very good example of what you call degen investing, where basically there's really no fundamental reason for you to actually buy AMC or GME for the long term. Who the fuck is going to believe that AMC and GME actually has a viable business model in 10 years, you tell me?
Yeah, like to put it simply, right? Meme stocks are literally just for the memes,
Marketing.
Like it's for the memes only. Like they are all going to the moon because they can. They're all high as hell because they're I'm not sure what they're smoking but they're all high as hell. So that's why they think it's all going to the moon. There's no fundamental reason. It's only all pure hype.
Okay, there's a technical reason. There's a short squeeze. You can argue, like that maybe there's a short squeeze in terms of like the what you call that, the AMC GME, right? Because they're heavily shorted, then they say, oh, you can squeeze. But essentially, what you're gonna realize is like you're like Sun Wukong in Buddha's palm, right? Buddha's palm is basically the people who will basically side with the institutions, lah. Which is exactly what happened to AMC and GME, right? How many of you actually like bought, then you can actually sell? You tell me. Actually you can actually buy more. They actually like all the big institutions around the world actually work together to basically stop you from buying more EME and more GME, right?
Exactly.
Right. So like I mean like these are very good examples of basically like snake oil lah, because it is a snake oil. I mean no sane person who has done the due diligence would ever believe that GME and AMC actually had a future in 10 years. They were basically just riding a wave of basically marketing and basically hot air, which is
Look at what they are doing now. They are pivoting into NFT. What happened to NFT? Then now they are pivoting to the next big thing. I'm not sure what they're gonna pivot into, but it's like they are riding the wave. Now it's more like the market leading them rather than they lead the market. Like these companies, they're all zombie companies. They don't know their future direction. The only thing they have invest heavily in is the person who runs the Twitter account behind the company. Because
marketing
that marketing basically.
right. So these are very good examples of like I mean end of the day, you cannot really like sit there and then tell me that you have a very good fundamental basis for investing in GameStop, right? So I give you an example. Now GameStop, the market cap I'm searching is about 10 billion. It's $10 billion.
Just 10 freaking billion.
Okay lah, I mean their revenue is 6 billion but still, they're still losing money. So I would say that I don't know, then like I think end of the day you kind of need to come to terms with the fact that a lot of these investments are basically gamble. because you
all
really
games
cannot.
and fun.
Yeah, and then if you tell me that the main reason why you invest is because you're expecting a short squeeze, right? Then it becomes a technical investment because essentially the hard part is to get out when it's high.
Yes.
Right. So I think that category, and then it's not something which you should hodl for 10 years, because end of the day, it is a technical investment, meaning it is
It
due to
becomes
some
it becomes like a trade already. Like
yeah, it
you have to
becomes a trade.
categorize this as a trade. And
Yeah.
once
So
the squeeze is executed, you gotta get out already.
yeah, you need to get out. And I think a lot of people seem to get confused that this type of trades is a hodl. It's a type of like something you hold for 10 years, which is obviously not even in the same category. So, if and then you don't want to be left holding the bags, because it is a game of musical chairs.
Yeah, the last person out, dead.
Okay. Yeah, the last person out, basically they get stuck holding the bag. Right. So the last one is obviously as of recent, it's called the DeFi moonshot, right? And that is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
over the last month, we saw a lot of this centralized institutions who try to classify themselves as DeFi, but they're actually not DeFi. And that is a lot of them. They basically, okay, so to broadly categorize, right, a lot of this like DeFi, like decentralized finance. If you know me and Ryan, both of us have never advocated or even endorsed any DeFi project because we knew that the possibility of 100% of a loss is 100%, right? So which is why you never see us do any like referral code. Like you never like publicly say we endorse anything, because we know fundamentally there is a risk that you can lose 100% of your capital.
If
Right.
you read
And
our articles, right, we have clearly stated this can go to zero and it has quite a high chance. And like quoting myself, this is not something I'll ask my mother to buy.
yeah, correct, yeah. correct. So like and we have learned and a lot of people have learned it the hard way in the last 1 or 2 months right? Because there were many like institutions which started to blow up because essentially what happened, what the design flaw which we stated was a design flaw actually became a real problem. And that is, a lot of people realize that a lot of these so-called decentralized people are actually not that decentralized.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was actually very clear. If you actually spend any time in trying to understand how they generated their investments, it was very clear as day that a lot of them were basically just Ponzi schemes.
Yeah,
right?
it makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
and then
I remember like one of our conversations, right? Like
yep.
what's the point? We had this discussion about like what's the point of DeFi when you have things like the banks and all that centralized finance that's working well, it's working, and then it's like a system that works. And like I reflected on that, right? It kind of like brought me back to my investment thesis to Ethereum. Like I keep saying like Ethereum is plug and play DeFi for the centralized institutions. And that's kind of like their way of modernizing, like, and it's going to be through Ethereum. That's what I think. And then like what I see for this whole DeFi, right, is like it's better when it's regulated, because when you have so much money, you want to be a bank, you want to hold custody of people's money, you have to be you have to answer to somebody higher than you. Definitely you have to have regulations in place, insurance in place, so that when it goes bust, it doesn't kill. You know what I mean? Like most of these DeFi projects, like these days, the CEO just say something weird 1 or 2 weeks before the whole thing goes bust, and then when it goes bust, they get out of the country, they go somewhere else.
Yeah, in these 2 words, whatever you have mentioned, Ryan, is called risk management.
Yeah,
And
in the
that
end of
is
the day, you have to take it for what it is. The risk, you have to be extremely critical about assessing the risk.
yeah, and I think, okay, coming back to the fundamental issue with DeFi is that a lot of these so-called DeFi projects, the reason why a lot of them went bust is very simple. People gave them free will to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, then it's like people pumping the money to him,
Yeah,
to the
they're
project.
basically giving money, and then he's basically treating this money as theirs, and then they're basically like making stupid risk management decisions when they have no track record of actually managing money, right? Essentially, this is the real problem, right? When you give a degen, early 30s degen, 60 billion, $20 billion, right? And this fella has never like have the experience of like of creating structures to make sure that there's default, or a bank run, right? Which is what the 08 and 09 like crisis occurred, right? That's why they increased the limits, the minimum amount of cash that banks need to have in financial institutions post 09 went up because they don't want a bank run. right? And then when you have like these stupid DeFi projects which are basically quasi unregulated hedge fund managers, right? Try to like invest their money and then promise you 20% return. And then whenever you ask like how do you get the 20% return, they basically just tell you, oh, you're a boomer, you don't understand. That's a very stupid way of like explaining how your returns are generated. So it basically like throws into a category of like potentially like or not high potential Ponzi schemes, right? So so I mean, end of the day, when you look at the DeFi, why it blew up is because risk management. A lot of these people were basically, they never have experience in like handling money. So when they finally get a lot of money, right, a lot of them basically failed to treat it as stewards of capital. They basically just degen it away. They basically use your money and gamble, right?
Go.
Essentially, that's what it is. They whatever retail investment came the money, right? They just use your money and then they gamble for you.
I mean, it's like a way out from working for them. This is fire for them.
Yeah, so it's like the fire with your money. They throw your money into fire. Right. So I think like end of the day, I mean this is why like as but it doesn't take away the fact that I still think DeFi is a very intriguing and interesting concept because end of the day I also have positions in DeFi because I also would like to believe that there is a future where you don't need to go through what you call it institutional financial institution to actually do transaction. And that's why the crypto is so appealing, right? Because you have Bitcoin where it's immutable transfer of wealth. Then obviously, DeFi, there are a few projects out there, who are trying their best, to try and make it decentralized. But the fact of the matter is, right, if you actually really go back to the ground basics, is that a lot of people are just not comfortable, right? Doing their own cold wallet storage.
Yeah.
That's the fact of the matter. I mean, that's something which a lot of people they have issues with. So I think end of the day, when you do an investment in DeFi, you kind of need to make sure that you do your due diligence and make sure that whatever money you put in, right, size them accordingly and don't go degen into it. Because
that's
usually, the red flag, right, I always hear usually the red flags are the sentence, right, is that invest in this because it is invest in this, right, because this thing has no volatility and it gives you consistent 20% return on your money every single year without fail.
The promise returns that's like the number one rule in how to scam people. Promise returns.
Consistent.
Consistent
the word.
return.
Consistent 20% return year on year. And the best part, no risk. There's no risk because it's algorithmically programmed to have no risk. Yeah. So guys, these are just some examples of the snake oil that went bust. I would say summarize that most of the time you should look out for very grand like statements and then actually like fact check to make sure that whatever they say is actually true. And then end of the day be very astute and be very factual about whether or not whatever they say can be actually achieved. And usually what I notice is that so now we go on to the topics of examples of moonshots that went well. So the first one, maybe we would like to like just transition into Bitcoin because we just talked about DeFi, right? And that is why is Bitcoin such a good Ryan, why is it that moonshot, when talking about moonshot, right, why is Bitcoin a very good example of a moonshot that went well?
Well, if you look at the yearly lows, right? You don't focus on the yearly highs. We look at the yearly lows. Every drawdown that you think that would have killed the Bitcoin market, it doesn't kill the market. It comes back stronger every time. And the yearly lows keep getting higher and higher every year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, not to say like fundamentally, right, this market is a pretty sound market. Like we talk about like Bitcoin being sound money a lot, right? So why is it sound money? It's you cannot replicate it. There's a constant number of Bitcoins out there that can be mined. There's like a constant supply of it, the controlled inflation rate. And then you compare this against other currencies, it looks like a much better hedge or like a store of value, if you would. We've talked a lot about this in I think our first and third episode of the podcast. So if you could check that out, you can hear all about it. But in essence, right, Bitcoin is really, really sound money. You cannot replicate it. You cannot make more of it. The inflation rate of Bitcoin is much, much, much lower than fiat. You cannot destroy it, the number of bitcoins is constant. So when we talk about like the tokenomics or like the supply of like Bitcoin, it's a very healthy amount of like it's a very healthy currency, if that makes sense. And if
Yep.
we compare that, and when we talk about like trust, right? Like who trusts people with like cash these days, right? Like but for Bitcoin it's traceable.
Yep.
It's something that you can search up where it went through the network, what kind of what address of the wallet it went into. It's traceable. So you don't have to worry about fraud. You don't have to worry about people taking your coins if you are holding it in your own custody, you know?
Mm.
So all in all, it just points towards that Bitcoin is just really, really sound money. And why and what is so appealing about money, right? You ask. When you pair money with the idea of network growth, user adoption, so you put in Metcalfe's law, right? It becomes like the internet because it is what it is. It is basically the currency of the internet. It's currency on the internet, goes through the internet, and when you have things like the Metcalfe's law, you know, user growth adoption, that's why like a lot of people can envision where Bitcoin would be 10 years later because there is very steady user growth adoption. There is a lot of innovation happening in the space concerning Bitcoin, the job market that Bitcoin opened up, the number of companies that was opened up in the name of cryptocurrency. You know, they work on cryptocurrency, they try to improve Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Lightning and all that. It creates jobs, it helps the economy. All in all, you know, from every angle, it's just a very solid investment idea. It's a very good investment idea, not just from the tokenomics, but also like in terms of like transferring money, right? Nobody's gonna stop you from transferring your money elsewhere in the country, outside the country, or like forex, right? I clearly remember when I was studying abroad, getting money wired to me from my parents in Malaysia when I was in England. It was hard as hell, you know. It was really hard
And
and
expensive.
and expensive. Yes, that's the main point. Right? It's expensive. It takes so much time. It's so much trouble. You have to go to the bank, sign up, talk to the guy in the forex counter. You know, you have to be wary about the forex exchange rate today and tomorrow. What are the rates that the bank's gonna take? For Bitcoin, no, it's very simple. Just send from this address to that address, and then you can convert it to fiat, whatever fiat that you like, in anywhere in the world. That's the magic of Bitcoin, you know? And that's the idea of like Bitcoin. Like nobody's gonna stop you from
Yep.
taking your money anywhere. So
Yep.
like really, you know, from all angles, right? This is one of the most solid currency systems that I have ever seen. And
I love that.
yeah, like I mean Bitcoin's a currency. This is probably like the best
Store of
explanation for
value.
it.
I would say it's a store of value.
Store of value, like, yeah, but
Yeah.
it works well as a currency. It works well, even better as a store of value. And like and it's still so early in its development. It's kind of like the internet in the 90s or 80s.
Yep.
We're still so early, and that's why you see like all this FUD going on and all that. You know, it's natural. You know, like FUD is kind of like it follows innovation, it follows growth because growth and innovation, all these things are non-contrarian. It tends to go against current beliefs,
Yep.
natural beliefs. So it's always very intrusive to, or rather, better word for it is disruptive. So that's why, you know, it disrupts traditional systems. That's why you get a lot of oppose, and that's why moonshots and FUD they coexist.
Yep.
But I think I went like off topic a lot lah. But that's Bitcoin, right? That happens with Bitcoin all the time. But why Bitcoin is such a great moonshot? It's because it's sound. You know, you can't kill it. Like every single drawdown, 2011, 2014, 2017, now 2021. It's not dead. Every time you try to kill it, it goes down, but it will come back up one day. The yearly lows keep getting higher and higher, and that's the best thing. That's the best that in terms of like the price movement, right? That's the best proof that I need.
Yeah.
And
I
when
think
when when like you get all these drawdowns, the network doesn't freaking stop.
yeah. They don't stop
I yeah,
withdrawals.
they
They don't
don't
stop
then
transfer.
they don't freaking stop.
They don't.
That's why I say this is like a good moonshot and this is not a snake oil,
Yeah.
right? Like what happened with all this DeFi is that when there's market weakness, what happened was price weakness kills the project. For some magical reason, you can say it's people, you can say it's because it disrupts the algorithm or something. You can say it's you have a bank run or something, but when price weakness kills a project, kills a company, then that means it's headed by an incompetent CEO or incompetent people, or rather like people who's just out there to take your money
Yeah,
on these games,
I
basically.
think you actually made a very good point. That is, if the livelihood of the company is dependent on the stock price or the price of the item, right? Then usually it just means that the protocol or the system that is developed to actually like run the idea is fundamentally flawed.
Basically a
Yeah, I think
Ponzi scheme or like a
yeah.
pump and dump.
Yeah, and I think end of the day, what you touch on is that the reason why I feel that after like many years of trying to like wrap my head around what Bitcoin is, right? Then I finally got it after I like really decided to sit down and understand it in 2019. I was very late into the the cryptocurrency game lah. Unfortunately, even
No, you're
though
not
I
late
knew
at
it,
all.
even though I like knew it so for a long time, right? That is because I would say that Bitcoin in terms to listen to understand more, you guys can listen to episode 1, episode 3 of the podcast, and that is it's a very simple idea that just continues to execute no matter what has happened in the last 13 years, and that is their main job is to basically update a ledger, right? Every hour or every half an hour, and that has not stopped for like the last 13 years. And that is a very simple idea. People make it a lot more complicated than it really is. Actually, it's very simple. And that is, Bitcoin, it is a ledger system, right? That basically allows anybody to basically do immutable transaction that cannot be stopped by any regulators, right? To basically send data over anywhere to any point in the world. And that is something that is very powerful because as we have learned in DeFi and in CeFi, over the many years, that when there is regulatory powers to stop you from basically making currency movement, it basically becomes a problem, right? Especially because it makes you very fragile, right, to the system. So a very
Like
good
you're at the
example.
mercy of like
Yeah,
the
you really
regulators
are.
or
Yeah, you really are at the mercy of the regulator. So a very good example I can give you basically what happened in Russia during the invasion. A lot of people, they saw their currency temporarily drop by 50% and they basically cannot withdraw any money. And what is happening right now is the people are at the mercy of the interest rate increments by many parts of the world. And then they're basically seeing their value being wiped out lah. So the reason, the big appeal that I have when it comes to Bitcoin is because it is a very decentralized it's pretty much a very decentralized consensus, right, where it is basically like coded very well and it has not been hacked. And I don't think it will ever be hacked because there's a security like built inside the mining facilities, right? So if you're not sure about this, right, I suggest that you just go and listen to our first episode and third episode. We talk very in depth about it, about why the moonshot went well, right? Like I think for moonshots to go well, it requires, as we have mentioned earlier in the podcast, it requires a certain amount of time for the idea to actually like sit in and then generate enough followers, right, to basically understand the idea as an investment, right? To understand the idea as a consumer is one thing, but to understand the idea as an investment requires some time of execution, right? So Bitcoin is a very good example. If you talk about execution, right, the next one we can talk about the moonshots that went wrong is Tesla, right? Because I think Ryan, when it comes to Tesla, he's a lot better than me, right? For me, I've been watching Tesla since 2012, and I can say that in 2012, Tesla was really a moonshot because in terms of finances, you just dig up their financials, right? They were running on borrowed time, right? I wasn't really very sure whether they could have succeeded. All I knew back then was that the CEO came from PayPal, and he potentially can do very well, but it's not so well to the point because I have not yet seen concrete proof that it was a viable business. Because as to even quote Elon Musk himself, he say the hardest thing to do in America is to basically reach profitable scale for manufacturing of vehicles. And the last company who did that, right, was I think it was Chrysler, if I'm not wrong, in the 1930s or 1940s. The hardest thing to business to be in, right, is in the automotive manufacturing business. Reach scale is one thing, but also to reach profitable scale. That is something which is very, very incredibly hard to do, right? So
I mean, back then in 2012, if you give me the idea that, you know, Tesla is going to be a $800 billion business, I'll laugh lah. Because honestly, if I go back, right, I also wouldn't be able to see it. And the whole point of this episode is basically to tell, basically to share, and that is sometimes, even if you don't see it happen, it might be worth your time to put a small position just to keep track of the story. Because if I had done that, right, instead of dismiss Tesla completely in 2012, because I remember very clearly, I was actually really contemplating just putting 10K in Tesla in 2012 just to see, but I didn't. And that was one of the most expensive mistakes I have made in the last 10 years. There were two ideas, actually, Tesla and Bitcoin, right?
But
I
I would say, like, in your defense, right? Like, from a fact check point of view, you want to see execution. I think it's okay to, like, miss out. But when like most of these red flags, right, or this snake oil, they try to sell you a dream, right? And like all these moonshots, they always start with a dream. Tesla's dream was to make energy sustainable and to have electric cars, right? It was a dream, and it was a dream that every engineer would love. Okay, that I'm not really like really good at like understanding like the tech and everything in Tesla, but like as an engineer, right, the dream of like having energy being sustainable, it appeals a lot to me because that's what we all live for, like engineer the energy efficiency, you know, free energy from the sun, you know, it's fucking free. Like we don't need to pay for electricity, it appeals, you know. And but the moment like snake oil becomes like a good moonshot, right, is when you see execution. And that's when I personally would put my bets down. Because like when I start to see execution, like for Tesla, it was like the moment where they reached production for Model 3. The Model 3 moment. For
Yep.
Apple, it was kind of like the iPhone 4 moment, right? Or
Yep.
like the iPhone moment, right?
Yep.
So when you have all this execution, or like another example, maybe not as great of an example for Ethereum, right? I see the merger happening, right? I will put my money down. That's when I would put my money, because there's execution, there's progress. But like a lot of these, that's kind of like when you can tell that moonshot is it's a moonshot or it's a snake oil, because like snake oils, they beat around bush, they do nothing, they don't execute, they sell you a dream, right?
Marketing.
But like if you and it's quite rare that these dreams, right, people actually like are serious about them. Like Bitcoin, it's like immutable transfer, great store of value. And like back in 10 years ago, it was a long shot because it was like people were just recovering from what do you call that? The 08, 09 crisis.
Yep.
Like it didn't seem right, you know, because like everyone was just hurt by the great bank run by the Lehman Brothers. But and for Tesla again, you know, like free energy, electric cars, you know, net carbon, that kind of stuff, climate change, seems like a long shot really. But they execute, you know, and that's what all that matters. Execution, you gotta see progress happening.
Yep, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is to see progress. And that is something which we always go back to the idea, like that's the reason why we did this episode, right? Is because when you see, the thing is, right, all these pivotal moments are inside this, the investment ideas are generally you will notice them better, right, if you have a small allocation in that position. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yes.
Because you learn the fastest, right, when there's money at risk.
Yeah,
And that is
definitely.
the whole point, right, why we are doing this episode. Because I find that sometimes, right, the reason why a lot of people are being held back into investing the all-in portfolio, right, is very simple. Because they don't even start a small position.
Yeah, you get a taste of it, you build conviction. And
Yeah.
when you have confidence, you naturally are able to put more money down. And if you get so comfortable to the point like us, you know, we just don't care
50%,
whether
even if there's like a 50-60% drawdown, you don't hear me and Ryan like giving a shit about it. I say why? Because it didn't take us we didn't like one day suddenly wake up and decide, 100% into Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tesla, or even Palantir was the way to go. We didn't get here overnight. It took us a very long process of like
It's a very
building
long
that
process.
position. Yeah, it's a very so. What I have trouble is that these people who are so-called market timers, they try to say that they can go 100% of their cash holding during a drawdown, right? It's just complete bullshit, right?
It
It's
never will
complete
be.
bullshit. It will
No,
never happen, all right? Because
never.
I've been investing long enough to know that a lot of these people who say that they can go 100% cash, the maximum they'll go, I can tell you, 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
5 or 10%. That's the max. And then they'll be like 95% cash. They don't invest their money on. All right. I've done this long enough to know that a lot of these people, their investment results are horrendous. And most maybe
They probably missed the rally last week.
I don't want to throw salt into wounds, but I mean, end of the day, if your time horizon is 5 to 10 years, a lot of this really it really boils down to how good are the fundamentals are of the investment, right? And a very good example why we like to use Bitcoin and Tesla and even Ethereum or even Palantir, right, is that because all these moonshots, right, if they become very good investments over time. And it's not something which you get good at next week or in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because businesses take time to grow, right? Apple did not become a $3 trillion company, right? In 1 week. It took them many decades to get into that level. And so it's the same as Bitcoin, so it's the same as Tesla. It does take time for the investment to work out, right? And then how do you just have to be patient with the process and then understand why is it such a good investment, all right? And then just be willing to wait for the investments to do well, right? And this is something which many people have. They love to do market timing. They love to wait for the thing to crash. I say, but honestly, what's the next headline you're gonna wait? Are you gonna wait until Bitcoin crashes to 200,000, right? Like now it's 20K. 4 years ago it crashed to 2K. Then now it crashed to 20K. Maybe 4 years, maybe it crashed to 200K. You won't know. So end of the day, we're not saying that you should just blindly buy based on what we have. But our suggestion to most people, the reason why moonshots and snake oil are a very good thing to think about is because it leaves you open, right? Don't make the same mistake that I did, and that is to be so closed off and so risk averse. I didn't even want to put in 1% of my net worth into an idea because I could lose money. Because sometimes, if you put in 1%, even if you lose 1%, there is a potential, right, where the moonshot become real, and that can give you build conviction over time. Because you think about it, you could have purchased Tesla in 2012, right, and then wait for the story to get better, and then buy in more. Then that's how you build your position. 2012, you buy until 2020, you would have done very well versus buying the S&P 500. But it starts with the first step, and that is to allocate a very small position so you can basically focus on the investment, right?
Yeah,
Because
you kind of like keep tabs on it. You put like a small amount, like maybe say just not even 5% to start with. Like I didn't start with 5% moonshots. It also takes a bit of time to build some guts and confidence
conviction,
to actually.
and also the story, like understand the investment. It takes time. It takes and it's not just time on your side, but you also need to let the investment prove that it can execute.
Yes,
You get what I mean?
exactly.
Because
And then as they
Yeah, sorry.
execute, you put in more money. That's when you put in more money. You see progress, and then like you can see the future clearly, even more clear than you first looked at it. The future is bright for them, and this shit's gonna 10. And when the moment you start seeing like people saying this shit's gonna 10x, then that's kind of like when you start to allocate a bit more, and slowly they show progress, they show execution, and you build your confidence. You don't see red flags, you see like or maybe you see red flags and they solve the red flag, they solve the problem. That's progress, right?
Yep.
And then you have more confidence, and that's when you start to have you start to size your portfolio to have more of that in there.
Yep.
You
And
bring it
start to
out of the
build-
gambling bag.
Yeah, and you build an actual position around it. So like if you ask me, a lot of these old Tesla holders, old Bitcoin holders, right, they actually started their positions very small. Then over time, they built their position to be a core portfolio, right? So it's not something which they get to overnight. It's something which took a lot of time and effort in understanding the investment ideas, right? So, even like, so this why we have this like moonshot lah, because I think it's very important as an investor, right, that your brain remains open to potential investment ideas, because you don't want to be like me, right, in 2012, where I basically didn't want to take any risks. I just want to buy what I'm really like familiar with, right? And then what I end up happening is that although I did well, I didn't do as well as I could have, because I was very close-minded to ideas like Tesla and Bitcoin. If I had just put in a small percentage and be willing to lose it, right, and basically keep track, what I've realized in hindsight is that I would have probably increased my allocation.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is something which basically is just like a learning point, which I hope you guys can learn from my mistakes, and that is be open to moonshots. Because even though right now maybe this is a core idea of Tesla, Bitcoin, etc., right, this core portfolio will change over the next 20 or 30 years, because I'm very sure there's going to be another idea that's going to come, and there's going to have this type of opportunity again. So a lot of people are very worried about missing the boat. I can tell you won't miss the boat lah, because eventually there's going to be another revolutionary idea that will come, and then we will replace this in terms of returns lah. Right.
Yeah,
So I
innovation
guess
doesn't sleep.
yeah, innovation really doesn't sleep. So long as there's like, people being born, and so long as there's young people, there'll be crazy people who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world lah. So I believe in that narrative, because that has been the case. Our standard of living has, increased dramatically since our parents' time, and our children is probably going to also experience a huge upsurge in like standard of living, right? So I think we've talked enough examples of like moonshot that went well, and also like snake oil. So maybe the next thing that we can talk about is basically like execution. So like, I guess for you, Ryan, maybe I would like to ask, what do you do when the moonshots actually do moon?
Well, keep holding. Well,
Keep holding.
of course, like holding is standard lah. But like what we talked about just now, right? When the moonshots moon, but you still gotta keep your feet on the ground. You gotta check whether there's execution or not. And then if like the moment you see that there's like red flags, like Luna or like CEO talking some weird shit on Twitter or something, and then when you see fundamentals change, you sell.
Yep.
Because these are like risky positions. You don't want it to crash to zero before or like but if it moons and it's like executing, it's in progress to become the thing that they promised to become, like to be fair, there's nothing wrong to sell a dream. It's just that whether they make the dream come true or not.
Yeah.
So if they're executing, I hold, and then I build confidence, and I genuinely think that they have like another 10x in them after they moon, then I will bring it out of my gambling bag, and I will start to build a sizable position, 10-20% of my portfolio. That's what I would do. But so far, my moonshots, snake oil, gambling bag has all gone to shit. So I've never had a chance to actually bring it out.
So far, my moonshot portfolio has done quite well, honestly, actually.
Yeah, arguably, I've kind of like started doing this moonshot snake oil a bit late in the crypto cycle. So, but I would say like I don't regret a thing, because I learn a lot. For 5% of my portfolio, right, I get to feel all the pain from losing my money. like if that makes sense, I learn from the mistakes, because like I rather learn from 5% of losses than 95% of my losses.
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is I find that in addition to whatever you say in terms of holding, right, when moonshots moon, I also think it's very important that you fact check and see whether or not is the moon sustainable, and whether or not is this moon like driven by hype, or is it driven by fundamentals. And so far I've noticed that most people have difficulty trying to differentiate between the two, which is why you get a lot of people who lose a lot of money when it comes to this type of investments lah, right? So like personally, you also kind of learn what type of investor you are, because there's usually two types of investor. The first type of investor is that they're very good at entering and exiting positions, and these are very, very rare few. And the second type of investor, which I think is most people, and that is most of them are very patient, long-term holders. And meaning like even if it like moves, even if it dives, they tend not to sell and they tend to hold onto the positions. So I've learned through my experience that I'm a person who is very patient, and I can wait for 10 years for investment idea to work out. So it kind of tells me that my main alpha when it comes to this type of time horizon, right, is basically be very willing to change my position sizing when it comes to moonshot. So if the moonshot were to moon,
I still need to have an active, like I need to be very intentional about whether or not should I consider to hold or should I actually like de-risk and then putting it into my core portfolio in terms of like so-called taking profit, right? Because like I think end of the day, what you really want to have and come to a consensus to is when you the moonshot stars moon, right? You need to make the decision into whether or not you want to hold or buy or sell needs to be intentional. It cannot be I go with the flow. Right, because like when it becomes very intentional, you're actually making a very active decision about based on the fundamentals, based on basically your own current net worth in your portfolio. Do you want to allocate more? Do you want to allocate less? Or do you want to like continue holding? It needs to be a decision that you make actively, because once you make a decision, right, then at least you should know, at least you can take a step back and basically reassess, right, what is the position in your portfolio is going to be, right? And a lot of problem, I think the problem with a lot of people is that when the when moonshots moon is not really a huge problem. The next one is what to do when the moonshots dive, right? Is that a lot of people actually fail to take a step back, right? Actually reassess whether or not it is something they need to actively decide on whether or not to sell, to buy, or to hold. Because a lot of people get it. I would say just like the way up and the way down, a lot of people make wrong decisions because they are unable to separate emotions from facts. Correct?
Yeah, it's really the greed and the fear. When it goes up, you want more of it. But it goes down, you're scared to buy more. But then, like, not all projects out there, they all, not all like moonshots and snake out there, right? It deserves your conviction. Sometimes when you see like weird stuff going on with the company or like the crypto project, right? It's time to get the fuck up. That's proof that the fundamentals are shattered already. It's time to get out.
Yeah, I mean, a very good example I can give is basically the meme tokens, right? Things like Dogecoin, things like Shiba Inu, right? I mean, you cannot really like sit there and tell me that these tokens really have like any core utility to it, right? I mean, end of the day, these are meme tokens, and the objective of a meme token is that when it goes up, you need to sell. You cannot like sit there and tell me like Dogecoin and like Shiba Inu tokens are these meme tokens. They're going to have like an entire ecosystem based on like store of value, really, like really Dogecoin. like I mean, it is a funny joke lah, but it's not a joke when you're losing 90% of your portfolio, right? So like end of the day, I would say you need to be very factual about the end of spectrum, and that is most people when it comes to money, they need a platform that is serious. It cannot be based on a joke. It really cannot be. Like as much as Elon Musk says it's irony, right? The fact of the matter is when it comes to money matters, people, most of them, they are quite serious about it because you're talking about livelihoods here, right? So like end of the day, and reassess whether or not should you make the intentional decision to actually act on a sale and a purchase. So when moonshots dive, right, which is our next topic, I think that end of the day, when moonshots dive, you should really take a step back and ask whether or not other fundamentals go and whether or not should you consider really selling and cashing out. So a very good example I can give to most of our listeners is the company called Palantir, right? I think my entry price was around $15 to $20. Then I even bought some at 24, but right now it's around $10. And then, but before this, it actually went down to as low as $7. The question that I have to ask myself when I see a position dive is whether or not fundamentally is this position actually still viable. And when I go through the financials, I actually listen to the SEC filing, I listen to the quarterly statement. I actually do believe that this company is actually still executing. So it doesn't really make sense for me to sell. And when I actually bought at around $15 to $20 and $25, I actually, full disclosure, I disclosed to most people, right, that we might see a multiple compression, and it actually occurred. I was actually mentally prepared for a 50% drop, and it did. It actually didn't even drop 50%, it dropped about 70%. So I think going in with the mindset, right, when moonshots dive, the best way to prepare for it, right, is to just be prepared mentally that when you invest in a moonshot, right, that there is a potential it will drop 50%.
Yes.
And that is what a lot of people don't seem to understand when it comes to investment, because every time they only look at the upside, they don't look at the downside. So whenever people come to me and ask, should I buy Bitcoin and buy Ethereum, I always tell them, okay, my suggestion, do you put 5 to 10% of portfolio? Expect it to drop 50% first. If you can see 50% drop and you're okay, consider adding more. Because what I learned is a lot of people, they're not ready to stomach that 50% drop.
Yeah.
Right?
Even
So
20%, sometimes people really go nuts at it, but I don't know.
yeah, but I would say like over time, what I've learned is that because this is not the first time I've seen such a drastic drop, right? I've been quite public about some of my positions going really to shit 95%. It was really a huge like wake up call to me, right? In learning how to invest my money, and that is basically like
in the grand scheme of things, right, if you want to get extraordinary results, it is uncomfortable. The journey is not easy. It's not a perpetually up. It's not like a perpetually up cycle. There will be times where you will see drawdowns of like 30, 40, 50%. And basically you always go back to the original thesis of whether or not this is a fundamentally good idea. And that comes from your homework, comes from conviction. So when moonshots dive, right, you actually really need to take a step and ask yourself the bigger question: is this dive a result due to fundamentally flawed design, right? Or is it due to basically macro factors? These are
Market
things you need
weakness.
to ask, These are things you really need to ask, because if you talk about things like Palantir, Tesla, Bitcoin, they dive is mostly because of macro factors, because multiple compression, interest rates are up, inflation is here, right? Then there's a so-called recession, right? I say these are factors that affected the price. So, I mean, obviously the price is going to go down. But then the question you ask is that, have the fundamentals changed?
No.
Not much. In fact, Tesla increased the price of their cars by 5% twice in 2 quarters to combat recession and inflation, right? So
That's
end of the,
execution.
yeah, so that's a very good example of execution in like during these down times. And then when you look at the competitors like Ford, they decreased their price.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, like end of the day, people always say, oh, this thing are going to shit. I say, but end of the day, you always go back to the execution. Or can this project continue to execute? Can they actually survive through this adversity? And then when you come back to the consensus that they can, then honestly, the right answer when it dives, if it's a good idea, okay, is to either buy more. And if it's a fundamentally flawed idea, like example, it's like when Luna's, the pack started to break, right? When it started to break, a lot of people, right, they never really like take a step back and realize it's game over already. Basically, it was game over. When it dived, like 20% people buy more. When it dived by another 30% people buy more. Then buy more until they basically went to zero lah. So I mean, that was a very good example of not being able to take a step back and realize that the design from the get-go was flawed. Because I've even written this on my Instagram story, right? I didn't really specifically point out Luna, but I did say that anything with a peg, okay, anything that is a peg are designed to be broken. There's a reason why, right, currencies around the world now no longer do peg system, right? Because they have been proven to be broken, and it is proven that it can be rigged, right? So people have learned the hard way. So if it cannot happen on a regulated scale among countries, I don't even talk about decentralized finance, like it just will not work.
Yeah, I mean, between countries is already like the ultimate trust already. Like what else? What more like in terms of like trust levels can you get between country and country? And like pegs just get broken like nothing. Like Thai baht in the 70s, was it? Died
90s.
90s, yeah, 90s died. What else? Which peg died again?
The gold peg lah, the US dollar and gold peg. That's the
Yeah,
prime
exactly.
example,
That's
right?
that's the prime example. Exactly.
You think about it, currency being basically like pegged by the gold, which is like gold standard, cannot even survive. You want to let it survive using Bitcoin.
That gold was like the sound money back then. It was like the Bitcoin back then.
Yeah, and then like, I mean, it has already been proven it cannot be done. So it's like sometimes, I do feel that people need to learn, need to lose money to learn their lessons. But sometimes they don't. They become even worse gamblers. So, well, I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast. I just want to basically I think we both just want to basically say that, moonshots, when you allocate them well, right, opens up, I think the main alpha you can get is that it opens up you to have ideas that can potentially be life-changing wealth. But at the same time, you also need to be very wary that your position sizing or portfolio is very important, right? So that brings us to the next topic, and that is our moonshots for everyone. Maybe Ryan, you want to take this?
Yeah. I would say like maybe I'll just share a bit like how I transitioned into taking this kind of like degen risk. But it's all like a very logical process, I would say. Like it's not that I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I want to get rich, so I should go and gamble my money in one of those 100x ideas. A lot of people shield Luna to me. A lot of people shield like a lot of the altcoins to me, and some of them really did go like 100x, which I missed out, But and it was a bit of the FOMO in me that was talking to me. It was like, yeah, you could have just put in like maybe even like $100 in there, and then it could have just gone to like 10K, and you can take that out, put that to Bitcoin or like Tesla. Sometimes when I think about it, I should have done that. But I was a bit like I was too risk apprehensive at that point of time. I was still learning about crypto. I was still getting myself acquainted with the market, and I didn't really had the stomach for like more risk. But as I progressed in my education in all this financial markets, right? The more I feel like if you want great returns, you have to have like you have to be diversified enough in these moonshot ideas so that you get lucky in one or two of them, and then it runs off 100x. But then it also has like this inherent risk of like going to zero. And that's kind of like when I listened to a podcast by what's the man's name again? Oh, Tim Ferriss. Yes. So this guy is a writer. He's also a VC, angel investor, and he was
Yep.
sharing one day, right? How he manages his portfolio. He's not on the public markets. He's more on like the startup market. So he clearly stated that the risk is very high with all these startups, and it's the same with all these specs, meme stocks, very niche crypto projects. It's the same, when you have things like that so high in risk, you don't want to risk a lot of your money in there. You put in just enough for the chance that it will go 100x. But if it fails, then it goes to zero, but maybe you just lose like 1% or 2% of your money. It's okay, because tomorrow when the market is up 2%, you're recovered, you're done, you've recovered.
Yep.
Right? So, but are moonshots for everyone, right? This is a question that ties back to how strong is your gut.
Yep.
So if like your gut is not good, but you want like myself, right? I didn't have like a very strong stomach. I was actually quite in contrary to what people think, like I don't quite dare to take insane risk. Tesla and Bitcoin, it doesn't look insane to me because I've educated myself already. But when I'm uneducated about something, I will try to read up first, and I build a certain level of like confidence. Then only I go in, because I don't like to gamble. Although we keep saying this is a gambling bag, like all these moonshots, right? I don't think of them as a like okay, they are gambles. It is what it is, but you have to do a basic amount of like homework before you go in. You have to kind of like understand what is the thing that they are selling to you, and you have to check up whether they execute and all that. But the volatility, right, is where it kills you. Like, because if like a 50% drawdown on Bitcoin and Tesla is already like you're already like shitting yourself already, these moonshots will definitely kill you. And like the volatility is no joke. It goes to 80%, 70% drawdowns. Some of them like even goes to zero, and the fact that I allocated a small amount, it just brings a lot of comfort to me, because I know that at most I only lost like 5% of my money, and
Yep.
when the market is up tomorrow 5%, it's recovered.
And if your core position is basically prime for 10x, then that 5% loss doesn't really matter lah.
Yeah. So like I would say if it's a game of like not game. I would say it's like a matter of sizing your portfolio to an
Yep.
adequate amount that you're comfortable with, and then you train your gut. You train your resistance to volatility. You train your resistance to ignore FUD. So that's in that sense, I would say it is for everybody, but there's like a trial of fire you have to go through to slowly adapt yourself to be more comfortable with risk. But then you don't get greedy, you don't YOLO into a moonshot.
Yep,
Like
I
you
agree.
don't YOLO into GME or something.
I would say that whatever you mentioned is something which I also agree with. And also to answer the question as to whether are moonshots for everyone, I would say that it is something which can be for everyone, provided that you go the right way around.
Yeah.
Because when you never take a moonshot, right, then you cannot expect moonshot like performance.
Yeah. I mean, if
That's why it's
you
key.
want to be comfortable, you invest in the S&P 500. There's really nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in it. Okay.
Yeah.
We never shit on people who invest in the S&P 500 only, because in the end of the day, like investing is good. Any form of investment is good, but it needs to go up to be good. And S&P 500 is basically one of the best vehicles out there. But it comes at a cost. It comes at like 10x opportunities. Like you won't get 10x opportunities, but you will get is a very comfortable life.
Yeah.
20% drawdown is like nothing.
Yeah, and emotionally, I would say that the stomach cost for the S&P 500 is not as high as Moonshot, lah, right? But at the same time, if you decide to go that route, you just need to be okay with the fact that the likelihood that you can, reach financial freedom early is very low, because that is pretty much the fact of the matter if you use that as a vehicle to grow your wealth lah, because the time that it's going to take is probably 30 to 40 years, you know. So if you want something that is like, for example, you can do it in 10 years instead of 30 years, right? Then naturally, it just means that you need to take a path that is more uncomfortable, right? Because it's what you call growth pains, right? You cannot get something without nothing, right? End of the
Exactly.
day, like the reason why I say it can be for everyone is because a lot of people, they just don't try. Even they are just not okay to lose even like 0.5 and 1% of their net worth just to wet their beak. Okay, not take a beak, right? So like right right, so I think this is something which is very important, and that is sometimes I feel that if I had taken that option in 2012 to basically just invest a little bit into Tesla and Bitcoin, I would have done a far better job of being an investor than a person who didn't take a chance, because that's about is also a little bit about risk taking, right? Is that sometimes you do need to take a little bit of risk and get yourself out of the comfort zone so that you can understand yourself better as an investor, not a gambler. I'm talking about being an investor, and sometimes moonshots, right? It allows you to learn a lot faster than if you had not taken the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you take a chance, right, there is a possibility, right? There is a chance that you will become a very good investor. But if you don't take a chance at all, then you completely stop your learning curve.
Yeah, I would say like from all the crypto projects that I've invested in that went to like 70-80% drawdowns, I learned a lot from them. Like what happened to them, why is it just general market weakness? It's like learning from experience. I'm the kind of guy who needs to pay tuition fee to learn something sometimes in the markets. I need to learn from experience. Like if you're like this kind of person like me, like the best teacher is experience, then you know you need to pay a bit of tuition fee. Like 5% of your portfolio is really nothing.
I agree.
And like if you like, I really like how you put it in the sentence, Aaron. Like you risk 1 or 2% of your net worth for a chance to go 100x. And some people just don't want to take that, cannot fathom losing even 0.5% of your net worth. Like if you put that in a sentence, right, that seems very trivial and seems stupid.
Yeah, because even if you invest in the S&P 500, 0.5% is basically a quarter's worth of returns, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like on average, the S&P give you about 6 to 7% return per annum compounded, right? So it's like 0.5% is not even like 2 months worth in the longer term. You get what I mean? So I think when you put that into perspective, right, it kind of makes me feel like moonshots are for everyone. I think the difficulty that most people have is basically what I face, and that is the inability to accept the fact that sometimes you need to lose money. And it stems from a very toxic saying and quote by Warren Buffett, and that is the rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As you know, it is quite toxic because end of the day, investment needs to be assessed in a broad spectrum of risk. It's not something which is very binary, because investments are not like the baccarat table or the blackjack table, because you can change your bet midway as the story progresses.
Yeah, we keep saying like 5% you're gonna lose it all, right? But like that's just the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
Like
the
what
reality the reality of the matter is most of the time moonshots you rarely lose 100%, and most maybe you lose like 80%, 90%. But for it to really go to zero, that is like really a black swan event, and a lot of factors must go into play before you actually lose 100% of your capital in that investment idea.
the reason why we are kind of like seeing all this happening these days, right, is probably because of like crypto winter lah. Like when there's like a drawdown in the crypto market, right, usually not just the crypto market, even in like the stock market, right, all these drawdowns usually it exposes companies that are not fundamentally sound, and that's where you have like the natural progression now, where some companies that are weak, some projects that are fundamentally unwell, they die off, and then better ones come in. Good ones, existing ones, they improve during recessions, during drawdowns. This is what happens most of the time. It's like a natural evolution, if you will, in the stock market.
Yeah, not just in crypto lah, but I would say even in stocks as well. There was a huge boomtown Charlie during the electric vehicle craze over the last 3 years, right? So there were many like EV manufacturers who went like boomtown Charlie, a lot of this thing. Then suddenly when basically recession hit, then basically what they realize is
quiet,
that vehicles cannot sell, so they had to cut price.
Yeah.
Yeah, then one particular company don't have to cut price, but in fact increase the prices.
And that's what we call a good moonshot.
Yeah, that's a call a good fundamental cornerstone investment lah. So I would say this brings down to the next topic, and that is why are moonshots important despite the risk, right? Is that I think end of the day, all investment ideas, right, actually do start from moonshots, right?
Yeah,
And moonshots start at 0.5 to 1% of portfolio. You cannot reasonably expect yourself to put in 100% of a portfolio, right, into
from day
one
one.
investment idea from day one. It's just not going to happen. It takes time to build conviction. It takes time to build investment thesis. And it takes time for you to learn about the company. And it starts from a moonshot of 0.5, 1% of portfolio. And then over time, the reason why it's important despite the risk is because you can scale your investment higher as the time progresses, right, over time. Maybe it takes 2 years, 3 years for you to build a position to 20, 30% of portfolio. As you start to get more and more comfortable, you put in more money and then you invest even more. And then if you feel that it's a shitty idea, you start to decrease your positions. The moonshots, the reason for me why is it important is because it allows me to be a very open investor. And that is, don't try and beat down or any idea too hard. Be very skeptical and be very critical about information that comes in and see opportunities, because it keeps me open for opportunities that there might be sectors around which has not been disrupted. They are ready and primed to be disrupted, right? So it keeps me open. At the same time, starting early, right, even if it's at 0.5 at a risk of maybe losing 100%, actually opens the gateway for me to actually get in a lot earlier, than basically when it is time to pivot. So the best times to buy investments are usually, we want to get 100x, are usually way before they actually showcase that they can execute. A very good example is like the Tesla Model 3, the Apple iPhone 4. Even Apple, before you buy the iPhone 4, they already actually start to show signs. If you had purchased Apple very early on when Steve Jobs came in, right, and then started at 0.5%, right, then if you see that he actually basically streamlined everything, he created the iPod, then he basically pivoted toward the phone. The phone initially didn't take off until the Apple iPhone 4. Then you start to realize that actually throughout this time period when Steve Jobs was restructuring the Apple company, right, that you can actually take your time and scale your positions higher, right? Then if you look at Amazon, also a very good example, you start at 0.5, then you see the story unwind. Even at a 95% drop, you can actually scale your investments up, right? So now what I'm realizing is that I'm having this scaling up thing, right, with this company called Palantir, because now I'm seeing the exact same thing that happened to Amazon, the exact same thing that happened to Apple. Basically, people beat the shit out of this stock, right? Like more than 60, 70%. But what I'm realizing is that the company just couldn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
and that is something which I actually noticed that happened to Apple, that happened to Amazon. Like despite whatever the market says, right, the CEO and the company just don't give a shit, and they just continue to execute, right? Left, right, center. Every single time when I go back and look at the company Palantir, it just amazes me, right? How this company, bloody hell, despite all this negativity, still just manages to churn out good products for their customers.
Yeah, making the right moves in the company structure and all that.
Yeah, so you ask me why are moonshots important despite the risk. The best example I can give you right now is Palantir, because Palantir to me has always been a moonshot idea. I expected it to have a very huge drawdown, but at the same time, as I start to build my position in this company, I'm really starting to see that this company is actually really very good at executing. Because if you look at the fundamentals of the company, look at the way they're doing things, they have government contracts in Ukraine, they have government contracts in Europe. Oh my god, these people, they're really executing very well. So it's like then of course, apart from the Palantir, there's also other DeFi projects which I don't want to talk because I don't endorse, right?
Yes.
But you really see that during this winter or so, whatever, when the tide is down, you really see who are the ones who can really execute and perform. So moonshots are important despite the risk, because when you actually really go down and then invest your money at risk, right, then you actually do notice companies are executing better during the downturn. And these are the companies you want to really keep a watch out for, because usually companies who can do well even during the downturn, their reward will come 5-6 years later.
Yeah. Because they have much more, when people are busy dying, they are busy building up a better foundation.
Yes, and I love the word they use, and that's called building, because eventually, right, all these so-called investment and building will come and return you money, right, 5 and 6 years down the road. It's just that a lot of people, they just seem to forget. They always like to see the result, but they don't see the process that it took them to get there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people say that Amazon is an overnight success. Say, fuck no, if you have actually followed the Amazon story, wow, I tell you,
Jeff Bezos really, that fella really went through a lot of shit to like basically build the company after the tech crash. So did Steve Jobs, so did Bill Gates. A lot of them, they went through a lot of problems. Like the most recent example, you look at Tesla. Walao, like Elon Musk like slept on the factory floors to basically like, manufacture the freaking cars, right? So it's like like it's not an overnight process. A lot of people, they like to see the triumph, but they forget to see that investments are just like life, right? It is a process that it's not easy for you to get that type of result. So the best way is to see that during these down times, right? When you have a moonshot, right, you can actually observe the company during downtime and then assess from there, right, whether or not they have what it takes to really build the company and scale it up.
Definitely.
What about you, Ryan?
Well, I agree everything you said. You know, moonshots are really important despite the risk. Even if you don't invest in these moonshots, right? There's a lot of lessons to learn from them. A lot of things that you can learn. Like I've recently just learned that pegs don't work from Luna. You know, I didn't know. Like I wasn't aware that pegs are bad. You know, until like Luna happened, blew up. Like what can you learn from Celsius, right? Hold your own crypto. Like arguably I would say like the Celsius was worse. The Celsius drawdown was way worse than Luna, because like the collateral that was used is actually fucking Bitcoin. So the CEO ran away with the Bitcoin, and the people, the users of the Celsius network, they're all left hanging with their Celsius tokens that's worth
Yep.
nothing now. It's like damn bad, you know. Like Bitcoin. Imagine your Bitcoin position that's like worth half of your net worth is gone.
Yep.
So like learn to hold your own crypto. You know, there's a lot of things to learn. Like even if you don't invest in them, like I would say they all tell a very good story, a good lesson to learn from. And I would say when you like you have your toes dipped into the pool, you know, you just learn much better, because all these lessons, they will remind you of the importance of it, and so on. But definitely I would say they are important. Like if you want outperformance, then definitely you're not gonna get outperformance from not taking risks. But also on the flip side, you don't want to get greedy. It has to be calculated risk based on logic, based on facts and truth. So yeah.
Yep. Like really what you mentioned about like having the emotional like learning curve is very important. And that is one of the important things about like investing, right? And that is you know, a lot of people always imagine that you need to have a lot of EQ, IQ and luck to do well in investing. But I would say that from my experience, right, I think you just need to have a like average or above average, all three, I think you can do very well already. Because the hardest thing that most people have need to train is basically their stomach for downturns and volatility, right?
Yeah,
Because if you
like
really
what this
Peter
Peter Lynch always say, the most important organ is not the brain, it's the gut when it comes to
Yeah.
investing.
And I've learned that to be true lah. Because the thing that I want to say, right, is that a lot of these moonshots are important to learn, is because over the many years that I've looked at moonshots, right, is that I really learned that a lot of these narratives don't really change and differ much from idea to idea. Honestly, it really does not change. The narrative is very similar to basically moonshot, and that is basically there is always a founder who has this big hairy audacious goal of wanting to change the world, and all odds are always against him. Every single institution basically don't like him. You know, all these like industry standards all don't like him. They don't like him because he's potentially this wanting to disrupt their rice bowl. So basically this fella will basically against all odds, right, overcome travesty after travesty, loophole after loophole, regulation after regulation, keep jumping through hoops. Then once he jumped through all the hoops, suddenly one day he wake up, he's one of the richest men on earth. And what you realize is that a lot of these moonshots, they follow a very, very similar storyline. You go and read every single business book out there, no matter what it is, right? You realize that the storyline is very, very similar. Go and read Nike, go and read McDonald's, go and read Apple, go and read Amazon, you go and read Tesla. The storyline never change one. And that is for every single 100x idea, it all starts from a man who is crazy enough to believe that he can change the world. It always starts from there, right?
And
then
that's what like I mean, like selling a dream, you know. It is a dream. But will the person actually make the dream happen?
Yeah,
That's
and
where
to
the
really
execution come in.
Yeah, and that is really to summarize like the moonshot and snake oil lah. And what really differentiates the difference between a moonshot and a snake oil right, is that moonshots are usually people who know how to execute. You know, over time, you give them enough time, you give them enough patience, these investment ideas, they prove that they know how to execute. Snake oil, on the other hand, they only know how to prove and basically talk and they cannot act. They are basically NATO lah, no action, talk only. That is basically snake oil if you think about it, right? Snake oil are usually people who are very good at marketing, they're very charming, but when you ask them to execute, they can't do shit.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean that's really like the crux of this whole episode lah. We hope that you guys learn a little bit from that lah. So now we'd like to move on to Q&A.
Right. So the first question I have here, which is from myself, like how do you manage conviction, or rather like the conviction when you're investing in moonshots? Because like a lot of times people get blurred between conviction and blind faith, right?
Yeah.
So how do you do that, Aaron? Like you're in this game
Uh,
longer than me, so
How do I differentiate between blind faith and moonshot? Wow, that's very tough to.
because like we always say, right, like the internet is kind of like an echo chamber, and then you have like people, you like most of the time they both like moonshots and great 10x companies, 100x companies, and these moonshots that go bust, right? They all have something in common. They have like an army of people on the internet. Like Tesla has like a army of like followers, but so did Luna. So it's really kind of like a fine line that defines them, that distinguish between them. But how do you like kind of like make it clear? You know, it's such a blur line.
Actually, quite simple for me lah. In order for me to go heavy into an idea, I need to use the product or service.
So it's kind of like the classic Warren Buffett.
Scuttlebutt.
Yes.
Scuttlebutt. Yeah. So I think end of the day, right, whether or not this idea is good or bad, right, I need to basically fundamentally be a consumer of the product. Meaning, Tesla, I need to have experience the product, understand the product, and understand what value does this, this idea or business do. And then once I used it, right, I realized that I can never go back, right? Then that's when I know, right, disruption is around the corner. If that makes sense.
Did that happen for you when you were investing in Amazon?
Yes.
So
Amazon.
you tried Amazon out?
Yes, I did. Like
Wow.
when I used Amazon, I realized, and in fact, all my best investment ideas are always stem from things that I have used personally, and basically I became a consumer, a huge fan of that product or service. So I can give you an example. Bitcoin is a very standard example. I tried it, I used it, then immediately I understood it, because as a consumer of Bitcoin, I realized, wow, this is going to change the world, right? I understood it. Apple, this is going to change the world. Amazon, this is going to change the world. Tesla, I tried test driving. Wow, this is going to change the world, right? So, like, I think it all stems from your experience through using the product. You need to be able to use or at least understand the product before you can actually go heavy into the execution of things. So that is how I really like differentiate between blind faith and consumer lah. So it's like personally, if I cannot even be a user of the product, right, then I won't even invest my money inside. This is really like the bare fundamental basic. Like, you really need to be like a person who likes the product, because if you can't even like bring yourself, right, to like or use the product or service, then honestly the investment idea should be quite shit lah. Like, when was the last time you saw a person like use GME or AMC?
Nah, man.
Yeah, when was the last time you actually like did a transaction with Dogecoin?
Never.
When was the last time you did a transaction with Bitcoin? You tell me.
That was like a couple of them a couple months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so you used it and you understood it, right? So
Yeah.
so it's like you understand, you use it, then you realize that you can go heavy in them because you understand the idea. So it's not blind faith. Obviously people will say that they have used things like Luna, things like that, they've used Luna. But I think the broader question is that when they have used Luna, did these people actually really take out the money and spend?
Yeah. I mean,
like a large majority of them.
The stablecoin really was that actually revolutionary for them, the stablecoin UST, right?
Yeah, and then like end of the day, the question you need to really ask as a person who buys all this, right? You go through the process, you understand how this is being done, then you need to ask whether or not is this business model sustainable lah. So that brings you down to the investment like thesis of the equation lah. Because sometimes, even though it's not enough to just be a consumer of the idea or business, you also need to ask yourself as an investor whether or not this is a good investment. A very good example I can give you is Uber. The Uber business, the ride-hailing business, the Grab business, right? It is
Airbnb.
amazing. Yeah, Airbnb. Yeah, these are very good products for consumers, but not necessarily an investor. Because in terms the route of the investor, the type of return you get from this type of businesses are basically, I would say that it's not as good as you would like lah. You
Yeah,
get
it's
what I mean?
the business or like the margins are really.
Yeah, so it's a very good example I can give you is the airline business, right? Like as a consumer, it's amazing because you can get very low prices. But as an investor, that's the best way for you to become a millionaire. You start a billionaire in the airline business, then you become a millionaire later.
Yes. I mean, like you get treated like royalty when you're up there, like people get your meals to you. The hospitality is great. You walk through the front door, you see the captain or the stewardess smile at you. Yeah, the hospitality is great and all. Being a consumer is fun, but flying is great, But yeah, if you consider all the debt and everything, it's not really a place you want to put your money in.
Yeah, so you need to differentiate that lah. So I mean that's the other side of the coin lah. So usually for me, I not only do I need to see it as a good investment, but I also need to be a person who can see myself using the product. Because once I can see that combination, right, then that's when I know I have a very good idea.
Just like sidetrack a bit, right? Like when we talk about like Bitcoin transfers, right? You know what I do like these days, like with my relatives, right? Like the younger relatives, like I tend to send them like 100 ringgit worth of Bitcoin just for their birthday or something, instead of like buying them some gift. Like if they're old enough to invest, and I would do it. Send them to like a wallet or something. Send 100 bucks, and then like let them kind of like see the fun of it. You get like the first time I remember when I transacted Bitcoin, I was like looking up and down for like 45 minutes. Where's the confirmation? Where's the confirmation? And then it's like, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's 1 out of 3. That's 2 out of 3. And then like finally you get that some of that. Sometimes like with Luno, you get like the confirmation email.
You really like magic like that, huh?
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun.
I really feel like it's like when you use Bitcoin, right? Then you see the transaction occur live. Like then you realize, then that's when I think you become a believer.
Yeah,
right? Because it's like you really cannot understand how it works until you actually use a cold storage and cold wallet. Then once you try that, right, then you realize, wow, this is powerful. This idea is really powerful.
Yeah, it's fun, It's like it's a nice little thing I do with my younger brothers and cousins if they're old enough to invest. But yeah.
Yep. So that was So the next one, Ryan, you have a question?
Well, just to summarize things, right? Like from all the topics that we talked about.
Yep.
I think we didn't do a really good job at like summarizing what are the kinds of red flags out there. We did touch a lot of it, but we didn't really summarize it.
Yep.
So like when these moonshots, right? Like we keep saying, when you see a red flag, get the fuck up. But what are the red flags, Aaron?
Okay. Let me think of a few points. Number one, marketing more than executing.
Yeah, marketing more than executing. Or rather just like all marketing, no execution, right?
Yeah. Pretty much. Like basically you have the people more focused on making noise rather than doing the work.
I mean, it's bad when a crypto project, right, is endorsed by a porn star. but that's besides the point. But like a lot of times when like I see like, yeah, there's more shills and marketing more than anything else on like some of the projects. It's just insane out there.
Yeah, and I think like not saying that good ideas don't have good marketing lah. I mean the best marketing sometimes is basically just let your work speak for itself. Right, so that's one way to do it. Then so marketing more than executing. The second red flag is ideas which are fundamentally flawed in terms of their design, especially when it comes to ideas which are driven by monetary systems. Because when you are selling an idea that is basically a system, right, then you need to look at basically the Achilles heel of the system and where is the breaking point. Right. So usually things like DeFi, if you actually like, actually the best way to look at DeFi, right? Like I've always argued the point, like DeFi, even though like I invest in DeFi, I always think that there's always like a Achilles heel inside, because end of the day, all these like so-called reward staking tokens are. My best counter argument to that is like Bitcoin don't even need staking because the staking mechanism is inbuilt inside the price.
Yeah.
Right. Essentially, it's just an inbuilt price lah. It's basically all the staking rewards, basically the price just go up, no.
number go up technology, right? So like so that's one way of looking at, and when you look at an investment, I think you need to think in terms of systems, and that is if the system is fundamentally flawed because they're promising like 20% perpetual return, and they someone say it's like forever foolproof. I say then they have discovered the Midas touch already, right? They know how to turn anything to gold already, and that's when you should really be very skeptical about too good to be true lah. And that is point number 3. If it's usually too good to be true, it usually is, right? Usually, if things sound too good to be true, it really is. It really boggles my mind how so many years later and so much money spent on university, you have people who just blindly believe that things that sound too good to be true, they just eat it up, right? So that's one way to like think about it lah. Too good to be true, it usually is. I would say maybe the last point I would like to add when it comes to red flags is, let me think. Okay, one of the key things that you need to watch out for is that when facts change, it's very important that you also change your position. And that is one thing when it comes to like moonshots that I've noticed that a lot of investors don't do, and that is usually when they are invested, right? And then when the facts change, they don't change their position.
It's okay if the narrative is a good changes for the better, but it's bad when it changes for the worse, and then the investor is still stubborn and doesn't want to like reduce the size of their position or like get out
or buy more.
Yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah, like end of the day, I think like usually as much as I say try not to make your decisions based on price, sometimes price is a very good reflection of what is happening in the market right now. And you sometimes just need to ask yourself, is this price reduction due to fundamentals that has changed, right? Sometimes, most of the time it's not, but sometimes it is. So sometimes it's good for you to ask when the price has dropped maybe like in one day like 40, 30%, especially if it's like consecutive days dropped 30, 40%, then obviously, nothing goes down 30, 40% day on day without something fundamentally being broken, I would say. Right?
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what happened to Luna. Every day it was dropping like 30, 40%. Every day. You're not talking about 1 week drop 30%. You're talking about every day drop 30, the next day drop 30, the next day drop 30, the next day drop another 30. I say if every day the thing keep dropping 30%, it's no longer like I mean it is quite obvious, right, that as an investor that something has fundamentally changed, because nothing happens like that and without like you needing to reevaluate your position. So and the right move is basically when this happens is to really like take a step back. And even if it happens, right, the right thing is to actually maybe consider selling at least 50% of your position instead of holding on.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Even if let's say if it drop 30%, then maybe the first day I won't sell. Then maybe the second day drop another 30. Then that's when I'll start to worry already. Then maybe that's when I need to start to sell maybe 50%. Because
it's abnormal. Like drawdowns, like usually it's not as bad, I would say.
Yeah, drawdowns doesn't go like consecutive
it's
multiple
normally
day
a
drop.
slow bleed when it's normally a slow bleed that happens over a week, even if it's like considered fast, right? Like tech. Normally, people say it drops fast, but it happens over weeks.
Especially when the market cap, you're talking about tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? It doesn't drop that fast without like someone attacking it. And if basically someone is telling you that it can attack it, then it is basically a system that is
designed to fail.
It's broken. It's broken. Fundamentally, it's broken. So that's one red flag which you need to keep a lookout for when it comes to the pricing. That's very famous trader. I can't remember his name. He did tell me that whatever news you want to tell me for the day, I know I already sort of know because I see it in the price faster than you can read the news.
Oof. Now that's a trader right there.
Yeah, but that's what he says is very true because I do notice that whenever actually before I even read the news, I just look at the price. I kind of know what kind of narrative it is out there already because he sees it faster in the price than you can read your news, which is quite true if you think about it. Really, like this is one alpha which I learned from this trader. Right, he did tell me that. I was like, yeah, that's actually quite true, because he says end of the day, markets are probably very inefficient when it comes to like the short term because they tend to overreact, but they are usually quite efficient over the longer term.
Yes.
So you kind of need to like
make sure that you kind of need to make sure that fundamentally you are investing into ideas which can hold the test of time lah. Because if you consider yourself a long term investor lah, it's just that I think you need to categorize yourself. Are you short term or long term? If you're short term, then just don't invest like a long term, and if you're long term, don't invest like short term. Because I find that a lot of the reason why people have a lot of headache, right, is because they kind of they're really just not sure whether or not they want to be long term or short term. Then they get
Yeah.
confused, then they co-mingle, right? And then that's the really like recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you gotta be like clear about whether this is a trade or this is like a long-term investment, because like the way we have been talking about moonshots and snake oil now, right? Like in this podcast, we have been talking it in the context of like long-term investing. But like sometimes you know things don't like GME and AMC, you know, that's pure hype. Yeah. You gotta understand that at some point you need to sell it to actually make a profit out of it, because the prices going up is not sustainable. It's not like has number go up technology.
They're not going to change the world lah.
No.
They're not going to change the world lah. I mean, like movie theaters really.
And when you trade, right, you really don't care whether the company or the crypto is going to change the world anyways. It's
precisely.
the things that you look at is completely different, like all the volume and all the nonsense stuff. But technical nonsense. But that's you gotta be clear on like yeah, really agree that you need to be clear whether you're trading or you're long-term investing.
Yep.
So that kind of like helps with like whether you need to sell or not when there's like a huge drawdown. Aside from this, right, I would say like when you hit up YouTube for the interviews on like some of the leaders and CEOs, you know, you can kind of tell whether the guy is like bullshitting or
Yeah,
not.
this is a good one. Good point.
Because like I don't know, I in this podcast we shit about not just this podcast, like in our own channels we also shit on like Cardano, sorry, but a lot. And the reason why I hate it so much myself is because Charles Hopkinson wasted 5 hours of my time watching him talk shit on Lex Friedman's podcast for 5 freaking hours. 5 freaking hours. He said literally the same thing for 5 hours. I did not understand a thing. I watched it on 2x, so it's like 3 hours. So it's like still 3 hours. If you read like those like I don't know, like there's like some other interviews on like YouTube of some CEOs. A very good example is like Theranos. I keep saying Theranos, but like Elizabeth Holm is like a really good example. But she faked it quite well. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think your point about the CEOs is a very good one of the most important things that you need to do while investing in a company, and that is can you actually understand what the CEO is trying to talk about? If you
Yeah.
cannot even understand what the hell the leader is trying to say, right? Then I think really you cannot if you cannot even understand the vision or what the CEO is trying to achieve, and basically they go circles, right? Then maybe your money is best suited elsewhere, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a very, very good point that you highlighted, because I think I actually like escaped a lot of red flags by actually like really sitting down and listening to the conference calls of CEOs. Right. I actually like really like sit down, then I observe their behavior. I observe whether or not they're mature. I observe whether or not how they handle responses, whether they can execute. And most of all, I observe how they manage to hold the fort during downturns. Because I think that is a mark of a very good person who can execute. It's one thing to execute when the market is high. It's another thing to execute when the market is down. So I
Yeah.
think a CEO, right, who can execute even and not giving a shit about the market is a very good example of a CEO who is most likely to do quite well in the next market run up.
Yeah. All right. Is there you have any questions, Aaron?
No, I think because we actually covered a lot of the questions on our topics really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like actually that has been the narrative. I think overall the last few episodes, actually I realized a lot of the questions is because we already covered like inside the topic questions really.
Yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory, I would say.
Yeah. So
All right,
you want
then
to
I
wrap
guess
up?
we'll just
Shall we
yeah.
wrap up?
All right. So I guess that's it for the Q&A today. It's a short one, but generally snake oil, moonshots, conviction, and all this is pretty self-explanatory. Gotta keep your feet grounded. Do your decisions based on logic, facts. Always practice a bit of like healthy skepticism.
Yep.
And I guess that's pretty much the end of our conversation today. So before
Yes.
we turn the podcast off, so before we sign off, Aaron, do you have any last words?
Yep. As usual, guys, the whole point of why we did this episode is to make sure that you guys understand that, all investment ideas actually do start from moonshots. And I think it's very important, as investors, right? If you're investing in a concentrated portfolio, that you start small and then build your conviction over time. And then also understand that unlike a casino, right, as the story and the investment ideas start to progress, you can actually change your bet midway. So that's the whole point of it. So I would like to leave with a quote that I learned from a person who I respect a lot, and that is also, he likes to say, Aaron, the biggest risk that you can take in life is to not take one. So I think that is something which is the ethos of this episode, and that is to learn how to take risks, but at the same time learn how to manage your risks. So I hope that this podcast has given you, some guideline as to like how to manage your risks appropriately, in terms of like the position size, as well as like making sure that you observe the narrative, and that will help you in become a better investor. How about you, Ryan?
I'll just say that Moonshots and Snake Oil, I've recently just got into them as well, but I would say it's a rather essential part of like investing that nobody really talks about, because for outperformance, you do need to take your risk. And this like Moonshots and Snake Oils, this is just really part of like the equation of risk management, how to size a portfolio, how much you should put in, and when do you actually get out if the facts change. It's all just really good risk management, and in the end of the day, it ties back to like what I always like to say for investing. Like, it really reflects your personality and your thought process. So always it like being able to manage your risk better will help like kind of like translate into your life as well. Sometimes where you want to take risks in your career, you want to jump ship, or you want to go for a different position, you are, or maybe like how to size your portfolio. It also ties back to like budgeting, how much you should actually spend and all that. If you want to like buy a car, take on debt, all that stuff. So yeah, risk management, and I guess the reason why we wanted to do this episode was also because there was like a lot of like this fluff that's going on in the markets these days, and like we thought it would just be like a really timely episode, a timely conversation to have, because there's a lot of things going bust now, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity for some of the investments that we have on hand, and this is when you double down and buy more. But for some of them that's going bust, you don't buy. So yeah, it's going to be a rocky market out there, but take care and invest safe, friends.
Yep.
We'll see you in the next episode.
See you.